If I've learned anything in my 30 years of life, it's that it's almost impossible to be really intimidating with a clean-shaven face and a big yellow t-shirt. Which is why in this moment, knowing there is no intimidation, no coercion happening on that side of the screen at all, I'm asking you to please support the channel by liking and subscribing. I will do my best to make this show something that is worth watching, and you will get the chance to watch me make a fool of myself as I grow this channel. Warren Byle, welcome to the Type House, friend. Good to see you.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's a fun thing to have friends in here and people that... You're one of those people that when I hear the phrase or think of the phrase, still waters run deep, you're kind of the person that pops into my head. But I have an issue with that phrase because the deepest waters in the world are the ocean, and they're not still.
Right. They are not.
That's one of those phrases. It's sort of like I couldn't care less about something, or like I could care less. However you say it, it like doesn't make sense whenever you use it. We have a lot of like idioms and like colloquial sayings like that that they just don't really match up. And yet we still use them and we all understand what they mean.
Right.
Well, I was telling Warren before we got started that he had texted me earlier this week and his contact came up in my phone as Warren, my love, Byle. And I was looking at that. I was like, what is going on here? Because my wife, Haley, had sent me his contact. And I was like, what is going on here? And it turns out Warren's wife, Julie, had sent Haley his contact. And so that's what it was in Julie's phone.
Yeah.
And so now I have Warren in my phone as Warren, my love, Byle.
Yeah.
And I'm not changing it.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. It makes me feel special.
It's going to be like that forever.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. How are you feeling today? It's been kind of a crazy week at HP.
It's good. I just happen to be here having a great conversation.
Yeah.
You've got a wonderful studio here.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
And so I'm just excited.
Yeah. I had a very important question to begin with. How was your experience competing in the Winter Olympics curling?
So that was a big challenge for me. It's a big challenge.
So the joke behind all this is that Warren had a doppelgänger in the Winter Olympics, which I'll get that picture from you and I'll put it up on the screen.
Yes, I did, and I have Norwegian heritage, but I always thought my looks did not come from the Norwegian side. But there was a guy on the Norwegian team that looked just like me. So I'm like, okay, so I am Norwegian. And sadly, they did not do as well as I would have liked them to.
Oh, no.
But that wasn't the end of my curling frustration. I was born in Canada, and my dad has some cousins that were big into curling.
Really?
Yeah, big into curling. And their sons that are like my age, they were into curling too. We even went one time to the, I think it's called the Vancouver Curling Club. And if you saw the Olympics, there's only like 4 sheets that they were curling on. And the Vancouver Curling Club has like twice, 3 times as many as
really?
in their building. So it's big time. And so I remember going as a kid, and my dad was out there just, his cousin had said, come out and play a game. And, he was thankfully didn't fall down. But, even that was back when they weren't using the sweepers they use now look like little Swiffer scrubbers. Mm-hmm. They were using a thing that looked like a solid mop. And it would go, yeah, that's old
Weird.
School.
I grew up in Texas, so I didn't even know what curling was until.
Yeah. And so I was frustrated when the cheating scandal came out with the Canadian team, because I was like, this used to be a purist sport, a gentlemanly sport like golf, where if you accidentally bump the ball, you just tell your players that you're playing with, I'm taking an extra stroke because I accidentally touched the ball. So it's meant to be
Right.
that type of game
Yeah.
where it's you're calling your own fouls and to see the video of a clearly a foul that should have not been done, and then the spat over that.
I did not see this.
Yeah, so
Oh.
so there was a Canadian curler who. What's supposed to happen is you got to let go of the rock before it crosses this line, and then they have technology to catch you if you don't let go. It's in the handle. The handle's like plastic and metal, and it's got a sensor there. So if the rock crosses that line, there's a sensor there, and the handle will actually flash a light that, hey, it's a foul. Kind of like crossing the foul line in bowling,
Sure.
kind of thing. But what the other rule is, you are not supposed to touch the stone part of the rock at all when it's moving forward. So there's a video, the Swedish team got a video of this Canadian team member letting go of the rock and then sliding his hand down and pushing on the stone.
Oh, we just barely touched it.
Yeah. And of course, this, ironically, I mean, this is a game, you're 50 yards, it's almost 50 yards. But at the end, it can be millimeters,
Right.
and so, and of course the big dust up was the Swedish team, because ironically these guys have been playing in this sport for like 30 years, so they know everybody, and so the Swedish team said, hey, you touched the rock, you're cheating, and the Canadian team blew up and swore at them, and it got in this big dust up. And of course, they're all mic'd up, so it all got caught. But yeah, it just, in my opinion, it would be just like if we saw, some cheating scandal in golf.
Right. You're like, what are you doing?
You'd be like, wait, but that's not the nature of the game. Where it's different. Other sports like soccer, where they're doing the big flop to try
Basketball.
try to get the referee to call a foul. In this game, there is no referee. It's like golf. You self-referee yourself. So if you're cheating, it's worse.
Right. Ultimate Frisbee is the same way.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was really into the curling. It was. I watched a lot of it.
Yeah. Gabriel and I touched on it I just released an episode today that I did with him. So it's not this last Tuesday, but the Tuesday before. Took me a little bit to get it all edited together, but we had talked about curling, and I don't remember who I heard it from, but somebody was like, yeah, curling is professional house cleaning. It's competitive house cleaning.
Yeah, it's. I think that would be an accurate statement. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, the one thing that I maybe had noticed it before, but it's honestly the job that I would love to have, is that curling is not played on flat ice.
No?
So what they do is they make the ice clean, like Zamboni it, right?
Yeah.
Like at a hockey game. But then this guy comes along and he's got a little backpack full of water and like a wand like you would water your plants with, right? So it gets this spray, and he has it pointed up, and he goes to the end of the sheet, the curling sheet, and he walks backwards spraying like this, because what it does, it creates a little pebbly surface on the ice that allows that rock to float.
Oh, interesting.
So that otherwise it would just get, because there's a little concave section of the rock, otherwise it would just create a suction against a flat surface. But it's pebbly, so it gets a little airflow under there, and that's how it's truly not a pure flat surface. And if you watch it and look at the ice closely, you'll see, with the right camera angle, you'll go, oh, wait, that looks like, exposed aggregate kind of, but very, very small. But I think I would love that job where you just got the backpack of water and just going, Yeah.
I'm realizing in this conversation, I don't know much about curling.
Yeah, and
Everything that's come out of your mouth, it's been new information to me. Every single bit.
right, and my understanding with curling is, I mean, you used to have to try to find it in the Olympics, to watch it, because it was never really shown. But it was because of my dad's family; they were big into curling, so I knew that it was a significant sport, so I would watch it. But yeah, and I'll just give a couple more interesting curling tidbits because
Let's go.
it's really amazing. All of the curling stones in the Olympic competition and probably all the major competitions come from one island off of Scotland. It's one island.
Do you know what kind of stone it is?
Yeah, it's a granite. It's like not an island that like people live on. It's literally just like this granite thing, small little, I'd say maybe 3-4 acres of just rock coming up out of the ocean, and they go out there and they harvest it, and then they make these stones out of them. And I thought, how expensive can these stones be? They're $1,000 a piece,
Oh my gosh.
and you need like 16 of them or 20 of them per game. So if you have 4 sheets, that means you need 80 stones. That's a lot of money.
Oh my gosh, dude. So this makes me think of whoever was the brain behind that enterprise. They were like, okay, guys, you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna create a artificial scarcity
Yep.
of curling stones. Okay, my granddad owns this little useless rock pile out in the Atlantic Ocean.
Yep.
Okay, we're gonna make it to where, and it's got granite. All of it's granite. Okay, messes up cell signals. Everything out there is terrible.
Yeah.
We're gonna make curling stones out of this.
Yep. And that's it.
How did they do it? It sort of reminds me of the way fire departments have now come in, and they're like, there's only one product you can use for people to get in, for us to get inside your commercial property or your commercial building or gate, and it's called a Knox box. Okay, it's probably like 3 to 4 times the amount of money that it costs to manufacture it. But I do want to know, like, who owns Knox box stock, and how
Right.
deep are they in the NFPA safety codes?
Right. If there's only that's called a monopoly, is what it's called.
Right. Fire department, I love you guys, but yeah, I think that's kind of ridiculous that y'all make us do that.
Yeah.
So we've had to put several of those on our property, and I'm not knocking safety. That's not what it comes down to. But there's just certain things like that you look at it and you're like, it's sort of like how senators and Congress people are like allowed to trade stocks on
Right.
Bills that they are currently working on passing,
Right.
and it's not insider trading. I mean, it is. It
is.
is insider trading. It's just legal. That's what it makes me think of. It's just like, come on, man. It sort of feels the same way of like, it's a gentlemanly sport. Curling is.
Yeah.
And, when you do that, you're like, okay, really? Like, you can get away with it, but you're like, come on, man. And so it just corrupts this. It seems like corruption.
It does. It's the same thing. Yeah. And it hits different, right? Than someone a charging foul in basketball. You're like, well, the referee called it.
Right.
you know? It's not like you're trying to get away with something that you're supposed to call on yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, that's interesting, man. Scotland.
Yeah.
Do you know who Ian McGilchrist is?
Ian McGilchrist. we had a chance to go to Scotland one time. We had some friends that moved there, and it is a beautiful country. It is. I highly recommend it to anyone who.
It's high up on my list for sure.
Yeah, it is. It is a really beautiful country. I mean, they've got everything from, oceans to big lakes, lochs that they call them, and mountains and everything in between. It's and they're wonderful people too.
Yeah, I love their accents up there.
Yeah.
It's the best. I read a book recently. It's called The Book of Doors. I think it came out in 23, but a lot of it follows this guy. His name's Drummond Fox is his name. He's a Scottish fellow in this fictional book. And basically there's this world of magical books where like there are these small books that they have properties where if you open them, or if you possess them, you gain whatever power that book has. So there's like the Book of Doors. So there's this woman who comes across this small book, and basically whatever doorway she wants to open, it will open to any other doorway in the world. And so it's sort of this like, transportation, portal type thing. And then about a third of the way into the book, you get that, how there's certain stories, how like you have the thing that's cool going on and then they drop the next thing on you.
Right.
Where this character, Drummond Fox, he comes in contact with this woman and he's like, this is the most powerful book in the world. And she's like, I mean, you can teleport wherever you want. He's like, no. You can teleport to any door in the world at any time period in the world. And so not only is it a geolocation transportation device,
Right.
it's also a time travel tool.
That's crazy.
It was a really good, there are a few, I'm getting chills thinking about that moment when I was reading that, but it's so interesting how stories can do that to you. They give you the thing that you thought you wanted and then they up the ante.
Right.
And you're just like, oh, that was good. That was a really, really, I can't remember the name of the author of that book, but it's a good one. Well, I have some cards here just with some things that I wanted to talk about, just some ideas. The first one says phone contact, quote, my love. So I wanted to make sure I got to that one. The next one was, do you enjoy competing in the Olympics? Check.
Absolutely.
I'm going to get that photo up there. The other thing that I want to talk about was I am constantly in search of people who have vibrant human souls. And it's an interesting, I've become obsessed with this topic lately. And in my mind, you are one of those people. And I found that the people that I know, that they just have like, I say still waters run deep, but they also have like a groundedness to their being that's sort of like ineffable. Like it's hard to describe. And I've found that the people that I know that have done that have been through typically some very difficult experiences in their life. And that's something that I've talked about on this show. That's when we have difficulty, when we, mess up at things or have hard things happen to us, like that is one of the main catalysts for growth, as human beings, So when I think about this show, calling it the Type House, I'm here to capture history. I'm here to talk with friends. I'm here to get in this room with people that I care about, people that I know, people that I'm interested in talking to, and just letting the world go quiet. Something that happened to you when you were a young man, that if you're comfortable sharing, is you had an accident that where you lost your hearing, and you were slated really deep in the music world at the time. If you're comfortable, I'd love for you to share that story.
Yeah, and it does kind of go to what you were saying about grounding, and I'll start the story with, I was in college at the time. And the yearbook comes up, and the yearbook people, and they were asking me, hey, what's a quote for the yearbook? Like, where do you see yourself going? And this is, after I'll get to the rest of the story, right? And I gave them a quote. I said, I don't know where my future is. Ask God. He knows I don't. And I had some people come up to me after the yearbook came out and said, Warren, what kind of response was that? They just didn't get it, And what had happened with me was before my senior year of college, some friends of mine, and my brother was in town as well. We went to a college group, which was some people that my brother had known. Wasn't the college group I was going to, but some of them were from my college. And they had like, it was, the house was on a hill, and so they had an above ground pool into the hill and a deck that was at the level of the pool. So I'd been there before. And they were like, "Hey, go get your, swim trunks on and get in the pool to get people in the pool." So me and my buddy, one of my roommates, we get our swim trunks in, and I go and dive into the pool. And it was a 2-level above ground pool, right? And what happened, it had been there for a while. So instead of it being, what would you think in a concrete pool where here's the shallow end and then goes down to the deep end, and the deep end goes to the end of the pool, it was like 2 bowls, right? And I'd been there before. I knew that you don't dive into the middle of the deep end because the backside of the pool is kind of like this and you'll hit against that. So I was aiming for the front part of the deep end, and I hit the peak. So I hit my head right up. Now, thankfully, I had been taking a diving class. So I was diving correctly, not like this, like we all dove when we were kids, but like this. And so I hit the top of my head. Yeah, I came up out of the water. I didn't have any balance. I was splashing around, and people thought I was being funny. That's what you do when you're in college. But then there was like some blood was coming out my nose, and they're like, "Oh, something's wrong." They dragged me to the side of the pool. And yeah, it was, my hearing started to fade.
Well, so let's zoom in on that experience for a second. So you dive in, so I've been like, slightly concussed before. You hit the top of your head on this peak
Yeah.
in the pool, and I assume you probably saw stars for a little bit, and your body kind of floated up out of the water. That's what I imagine. What was that experience like?
People thought I lost consciousness. I didn't. I just hit. I thought I knew. I'm like, oh, I hit my head. And of course, it was thankfully not a concrete bottom pool, so there was some give to, otherwise, I wouldn't be here.
Right.
But I came up and I was, you live your whole life with perfect balance, and all of a sudden now I'm like feel like I'm falling over, and splashing around a little bit. And the guy who jumped in with me comes right over to me, and he dragged me to the side of the pool. So yeah, thankfully I didn't go unconscious. I wasn't under the water or anything like that.
Right.
I came right back up, but they got me picked up out of the pool. And people sit there and they say, do you ever feel close to God? And, it's some people do, some people don't. And I was laying on the pool. It was evening, sun was like just setting, right? So beautiful evening. I'm looking up at the sky, and I don't know what's going on with me, but I just felt like everything was okay. I like the most peace I've ever had in my life. It was going to be okay.
And this was as your hearing was.
Yeah, one ear went really quickly, but the other one was like fading, over probably a couple minutes, But yeah, then the ambulance came, took me to the hospital, and
So at what point did you fully lose your ability to hear at that time? Like everything was just
yeah, it just
totally gone.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, one ear, like I said, one ear was instant. I came out of the pool, just heard nothing, and the other ear probably faded over a few minutes.
Wow. So by the time the ambulance got there,
Yeah, nothing.
wow.
Yeah.
And you were majoring in music
That's right.
at the time.
Yeah, I was working on a sacred music degree. I wanted to lead music in the church, and I had been helping out a church that they had to fire their music pastor for some reasons, and I sat there, and that was telling me, hey, I want to kind of more be like a tent maker. So I was planning to go get a master's degree so I could teach music so that I wouldn't have to go to the church and say I need a full-time salary. That I could sit there and say, no, I'm teaching music in high school, junior high, whatever, and I can help out with music in the church without having to, for church that doesn't maybe have the means to have a full-time music pastor. So
Right.
that was my plan, but that all changed.
So when you got to the hospital, so presumably you couldn't hear. So to communicate with you, did they have to write, or how long did it take them to kind of figure it out?
Yeah, they had to write, and of course what happens when you aren't hearing well, a lot of times you start speaking louder. And so I'm in there trying to talk to my brother, and I can't hear anything, so I'm sure I was talking really, really loud. And of course the doctors were like, oh, this guy's been at a college party, you know. And and so they actually didn't do a lot the first night. They're like, okay, he's something's wrong, but we'll whatever, come back tomorrow and get a CAT scan.
They thought you were like drunk or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I mean, and of course, I'm sure they took blood samples and stuff. They could have checked that. So I came back the next day for a CAT scan. And that's when they're doing the CAT scan, and my dad's sitting there, because my parents had come down by then. They were a few hours away. And that's my dad sitting there with the guy who's running the CAT scan, and the guy's like, after it's done, he's looking at this, like, oh, wait, whoa, wow, oh, this is, so what had happened is, instead of breaking my neck, which is one of the easiest bones in the body to break, it takes like 14 pounds pressure to break a neck bone. That's why you see it always on the TV, right? The, thing in the movies, right? What had happened is the base of my skull, which takes about 80 pounds of pressure to fracture, had fractured in 7 places.
So
And
this is down.
yeah, so the base of your skull, like, and what happened is it had, those fractures had gone over the cochlea, which is what you hear with, and had fractured them.
Oh wow. So it wasn't an eardrum, or was
No.
this? It wasn't an eardrum injury.
No, not an eardrum injury. It's the actual cochlea itself, which the way that cochlea works is real. It looks like a nautilus shell.
I don't. Oh, like a spiraling.
Yeah.
Okay.
And inside is a whole bunch of little hair cells, and it's filled with fluid. And what happens is those hair cells, when they're moved by the fluid, the eardrum connects to a bunch of little bones that go to a little, small little, flexible, looks like a drum head as well, that's on the cochlea, which moves the fluid in the cochlea. And depending on where the vibrations travel through this conical structure, and the higher notes are at the beginning, right? Because higher frequencies don't travel through fluid as well. Lower notes are further up. And what happens is those cells, those cochlea structures, which are solid and they're filled with fluid, they fractured, the fluid drains out, and all those cells inside die. And they're one of the few cells in the body that do not regenerate. That's why you got friends that worked on a farm their whole life, driving tractor day after day, and all of a sudden they're losing some hearing. It's because what happens is those cells for that certain frequency that the tractor was creating just got hammered for a long time, and then the cells that were just overworked, they start to die. And that's how they lose that environmental hearing, and then they don't regenerate. And of course, there's also hearing degradation just from age.
Right. I know I will probably have issues with that as I get older, just because of the amount of time that I spent around diesel engines and nail guns, and growing up.
Yep.
It just even in the 2000s, we weren't super cognizant of making sure we wear earplugs or firearms or things like that.
I'm grateful because so after the CAT scan, I get to a doctor, and it was a nice older doctor. I was glad that it was someone that was very experienced, and he looked And he had two things to say. He goes, first of all, young man, you're really lucky. He says the last time I saw a CAT scan with someone with fractures like this was a guy who was on a dock door, helping a semi-truck back up, and he stuck his head out to help the truck come back, and his head got caught between the truck and the pad and he died.
Oh my gosh.
He's like, so you shouldn't be alive right now. And then the second thing he said is he said, your cochlea is connected to another fluid-filled structure, which looks like 3 rings. That's where your balance comes from. He stood me up. He had my dad and my brother get behind me. He's like, you walked in here. I'm like, yeah. He's like, stand up a second. He's like, close your eyes. He pushed me. And I kind of took a half step back. He's like, you shouldn't have any balance right now. And I was having issues with balance. And he was scratching his head, and he looked down. And he's, I've got like size 15 feet. He's like, well, maybe you've got a bigger platform that's giving you enough information that you're falling for you to correct. But that's true. So I lost my hearing. I lost my balance at the same time.
Whoa.
And the balance is easier to do because your body, everybody's body, isn't 100% dependent on your ear for balance. That is the very, very fine motor. You look at dancers doing their pirouettes and things like that. That fine motor is how they can do it, because it's very, very accurate. But your eyes help in other things. So yeah, if I'm walking along in some situation and it goes completely black, a room that goes completely black, and I have no visual reference to help me, I'll fall over.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Well, even still, I would never know that you had balance issues, having known you for a number of years.
Right.
It's not noticeable.
No.
At all.
And it only will happen every once in a while in a daylight situation, like because my body just learned, okay, well, keep your eyes open and keep yourself pretty square. If I'm like walking and talking with somebody and I'm looking at them, and then we make a turn or something like that, sometimes I can lose a step a little bit, but even that doesn't. Most people wouldn't. They think, oh, well, you just tripped over the carpet a little bit or something like that. But
yeah, well, using visual anchor points is very important for balance. So it sounds like that's how your body has adjusted to the balance issue. So I was a circus nerd growing up.
Yeah.
And so I got what was a slack line, right? So it was basically a tightrope.
Right.
It would just be, wouldn't be quite as rigid for balancing. And one of the things they teach you is when you're on the rope and you're looking across it, right, you keep your eyes anchored at the other end where it's tied to whatever structure it's pulled between. So 2 trees or a couple of beams or something like that. You keep your eyes there. So even as your feet are moving back and forth, you have that thing that keeps your head in place.
Because I think that makes a lot of sense, because what it's doing is it's keeping your head in place so that those super fine, sensitive balance agents in your ear can help you even more. Right? Because if you were flopping your head around, now those fine motor balance sensitivity things, you're taking them out of the game. Where if you're focusing, keeping your head in one spot, now they're doing a lot of work to because slacklining, I would never be able to do that.
I knew that those structures in your hearing and your I've learned more about curling and cochleas right now than I've ever learned in the rest of my life.
We got to think of a couple more C things, and we'll just do all curling, the letters C today.
I love it. But because I took a diving class when I was in university, and so we went out to some murky lake out in West Texas. It was 28 feet deep or whatever. And we went down and do that. But in the training for it, you learn about if you're diving, and you're coming up too soon, you have the pressure changes, and so the fluid in your cochlea and everything else can't adjust.
Right.
So they burst.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why when that happens to divers, if they're not on a rope, you cannot tell which way is up. Especially if it's too dark. There's no sense inside your body that will tell you. And so a lot of so divers die this way, is they can't figure out where the surface is.
And I will say probably the scariest sensation I've had like this, because I did have some surgeries where they went into my inner, they went through my eardrum. And so because of that, and because of the type of surgery that I've had, I can't do scuba diving anymore.
Right.
But that sensation you just talked about, I've only experienced it once. And it was, we were down at Schlitterbahn, and they've got that lazy river where the whole bunch of water comes out. Mm-hmm. And you kind of jump into that flow and kind of ride the flow. Well, I jumped into that flow of water. It's just a big dump of however many thousands of gallons of water. It turned me upside down under the water. Mm. And because I don't have those, I got that same sensation where I didn't know which way was up.
Yeah.
And I'm under the water, and it took me, normally you only want that type of thing where you kind of disoriented underwater for like a half a second. It probably was like 3 seconds, and then finally I came up, but that was kind of like, okay, I'm not going to do what I have been doing with all the kids and jumping right when that big thing of water comes down. And
right.
I'm to kind of finish the story. So a year after I had my accident, I had to go to school, finish my college degree. I have a degree in sacred music. I did not have any significant music classes to finish my last year, which was thankful, because if it would have been like some performance class or something like that I just couldn't do it.
Right.
And then I would have been in it. But I had enough credits and everything. All that was left was non-music classes, so I was able to graduate so it would have only been, that my accident happened in August. 3 weeks before my senior year of college, finished my senior year of college. Then in June, graduated in May. In June, I had a cochlear implant. Mm-hmm. And what that does is it makes a hypothesis. The nerves that are connected to the cochlea are there. Some people that are born deaf, that nerve just never even developed. So a cochlear implant wouldn't help them. Mm. Or somehow that nerve got damaged. So, but the assumption is the nerves connected to the cochlea work. All the cells that would stimulate those nerves are dead. And so the implant looks like a little metal tail. And so they go and weave this little metal wire up into the cochlea, and along this metal wire are little electrodes. And where those electrodes are, the further away they go, the deeper the tones are. Mm. And so what they do is they go, so we're going to sit there and stimulate those nerves. Now, of course, I tell anybody, they're like, well, Warren, you can hear, that's great. I'm like, well, it's a prosthetic type hearing, because I went from millions of cells being stimulated to 22. And so take the analogy like colors on a television. Going from 8K television to 22 colors.
22 shades of whatever.
No, 22 colors. Like you're really basic, not black and white, but one step up from that, which is a far cry from your 8K television.
Mm.
But here's the most, you were talking about the brain. People like me who had hearing and then they get a cochlear implant, they do really, really well with them because what happens is the cochlear implant gives a very rudimentary picture. And someone who's got normal hearing just can't even conceptualize this. On the fly, your brain fills the gaps.
Oh, I think of this as in a visual medium. That's sort of the way I think about it, how we have blind spots in our sight that our brain just fills in.
Yeah, your eyes do that type of thing. Just like you can do that deceptive thing where they have glasses you can put on that turns things upside down. You take it off because your brain was inverting things. So we get that from a visual perspective because we've seen things, mirage or other things like that this just doesn't look right, and your brain will try and correct that visually. But in the hearing world, that doesn't happen. People with good hearing, it's a one-to-one. The brain's just taking it straight through. But with me, it was like they first turned on this implant, and it was the most disappointing thing because everyone's voices sound like the Chipmunks or, cartoon character. It was really
right. Think about the parents from was it Peanuts?
Yeah,
that kind of thing.
You were expecting to have your hearing back, and even though you were hearing things, you're like, this is nothing like it. But what happened is they make you wear it. You got to keep, and then over time, all of a sudden, wait, it's starting to sound more normal. The implant's not doing anything different. What's happening is your brain's saying, I'm not getting enough information, so I'm going to fill it in.
Interesting.
And it starts filling it in on the fly. Now, what happened is, and this is my explanation, because some people say, okay, so you got this implant, Warren, can't you do music again? Because you can hear now? And I have a number of answers of which, yes, I mean, I go to church and we sing songs, and if I know the song, I'll sing along, What I don't know is whether I'm singing it in the same key as everybody else. Because here's what my brain can do. Since it doesn't believe the implant explicitly, because it has enough information to know that, wait, when this implant showed up, it's not giving the right information. So the brain's going, I'm helping. So I get into church and we're singing along in a song, sing some hymn or something. And my mind goes, I think there's a key change after this verse. And you know what? I'll hear one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
If I want to keep, and everybody there, my brain goes, you wanted a key change? Here it comes.
Oh.
So every sound I'm hearing from guitars, piano, people singing around me, boom, key change.
So what is that experience like? I want to slow down for a second because this is fascinating to me, and I don't think I fully understand. So it's sort of like, if I had, can I put this in a light medium?
Yeah.
To help me understand. So what you're saying is so you're in a room, okay, you have the lights here, and then all of a sudden, it's not necessarily a choice of yours, but it's sort of your brain deciding that a key change is going to happen. Is this like a conscious decision, or I don't understand?
No, it's both where I'm uncertain, and it's just ready to do whatever you want. How I tested it, I'll give you the example of how I tested it. When our daughter was little, they have the little xylophone toy, right? Like it's on wheels with a little rope that pull around. And I was like, and I was playing around with it. I was playing Jingle Bells on it, right? And I just stopped myself. I played it a few times. I'm like, what if I play the Jingle Bell rhythm on just one of them? You know?
Okay.
And guess what I heard? Jingle bells. I heard it go.
Whoa.
Because my brain is now sitting there going, what do you need? What do you need? We'll give it to you. In like if you were to walk into a room and go,
It's like an eager drug salesman on speed.
yeah.
What do you need? What do you need? I can do it.
Yeah. The visual thing would be like if you see a friend and you go, yeah, the color of that shirt just doesn't quite work for them, and then all of a sudden the shirt changed.
It makes me think of schizophrenia.
That's the visual representation. So that's what makes me participating in music difficult, because my brain's ready to, what do you need so that you can understand this? And that ability to be dynamic and fluid and changing means trying to participate with others in music is difficult, because it's not sitting there saying, where are they at? It's like, we're just here ready to make it work.
Interesting. Okay, so is it a different experience when it's a song that you knew before your injury and a song that you'd never heard before? So presumably, if you're doing Jingle Bells, you knew that way before you had your injury. Right. So dun 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 dun. Whereas if it's a song you've never heard before, like Back in Black, Back in Black, or whatever it is.
Yeah, and what happens there is, if it's a song I've never heard before, I'll learn it wrong.
Oh, interesting.
I mean, there have been times where, we get some new song at church and I think I know how it is, and then I'll go look at the sheet music and I go, no, I had this all wrong.
Right, because you had learned that skill.
Because it's the same thing where my brain is sitting there going, I'm like, I think the song is like this, and brain's like, yeah, whatever you want. So
one of the other aspects of your story that I really enjoy, that I want to get to, is you've told this joke that that Julie, your wife Julie, started praying for you before she ever met you, and that's sort of related to your injury. Do you mind telling that little bit?
Yeah, that is true, and as much as I'm sure many couples, they would say they were praying for their spouse before they met them. My wife was praying for me by name. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what that says about me, like I needed a lot of prayer. But what happened was, she was going to the church that the college group was where I had my accident. I wasn't going to that church. Like I said, I was helping at a different church. But my brother was in town, and he knew some of the people that were in that college group, and he wanted to go see them. So that's why I was at their college event or swim party, whatever. Mm-hmm. Julie was a part of that church, but she had been gone for the summer. I think that's what it was.
So she wasn't there when the accident happened, even though she knew most of those people.
Yeah, but she came back, and obviously that college group, because they were there, they were, they were there when my accident happened, and so Julie comes back to the first prayer meeting after the accident, and the college group, and they were all praying for me, and she just felt compelled, and she just joined in and prayed for me, and I mean, by name. And
that's amazing.
And then it was probably a year and just a little bit over a year. It's amazing how much stuff happened in such a short amount of time. A year later, I wound up moving back to the town where my college was, and Julie was still there. And we wound up meeting at that same church.
Oh, that's awesome.
So she knew me before I knew her.
So what was that big shift like in your life? Because before you had this trajectory that you were on, wound up solely in music, and then the biological tools that you had for those got crushed.
Yeah.
literally.
I mean, that's kind of going back to how I started this, where that was the question. I mean, I'm getting through my senior year of college, don't have my implant yet, and I get this someone from the yearbook saying, "Warren, give me a quote. Where's God taking you from here?" And I said, "Ask him. He knows. I don't." And I would say I wasn't like, I didn't feel like I was doing a complete, "Hey, God, this is what I want to go do in my life. You're good with it, right?" I don't feel like it was like that. But after a significant change like that, where you really step back and go, "Okay, hold on a minute. I'm gonna have to sit there and God, what you want from me is I'm gonna wait and see what you have. I'm not gonna, you know, try to push down a road, maybe a little bit of my own strength kind of thing." So that significantly changed my perspective there. And I would say even today, it's very much a, "Hey, hold on a minute. I need to make sure that this is the path that God has for me, because otherwise I don't want to go down it.
Yeah.
Make sure that the door is something that He's opening." Because it did. I mean, and I think it's typical when you're young that you're supposed to have a frontier, especially if you're a young man. Go conquer that frontier, whatever that is, college degree, a certain career, whatever. But yeah, so, I mean, sometimes when it that was my response, was just a very, very reflective response. Like, hold on a
Right.
minute.
Did you go right back to school? Because this accident happened in August?
3 weeks before school,
Dude, what'd you do that for that fall semester?
I had some very, very good friends that took excellent notes in my classes, because, I mean, two things: that people helped me a lot with notes. The other thing that helped was it was my senior year, and I did not have I had taken good full loads of classes in my first 3 years. I didn't have that much left to do. So that helped. Ironically, I got great grades my senior year, and my mom was kind of like, "What's that saying here?" But it was that, and people are like, "Did you learn to lip read?" And I'm like, that's probably one thing that I could say was just kind of a gift, because
Right.
I didn't ever remember learning to lip read. It just came, which was something that you need if you're hearing impaired. You read lips, and
Right.
it just I don't know if it was something that I just had subconsciously been doing before a little bit. To just my brain a bit, because I don't ever remember how am I going to communicate with people. The lip reading just came easily, and there may be an easy explanation for that, is if you are a hearing person for a long, long time, and you've been communicating with people a lot, so you subconsciously are seeing the lip movements. Then when the hearing's gone, the lip reading probably comes pretty
Because
easily.
you've already had that sort of dual learning experience
Right,
where you're
right.
matching the sounds coming out of people's mouths to the
Yeah.
shapes that their mouth
Yeah.
and their lips and their teeth are making.
As opposed to someone who's born deaf, they're having to completely learn what do those shapes mean,
Right?
because
Right.
they don't have the correlation between the mouth shapes and the sounds.
Did you ever learn any like American Sign Language?
I did learn some. We took some classes, my wife and I did, and that was really, really interesting, because and the best class we took was taught by a deaf person. They did not speak at all. The whole class. They walk in, and you're just, all these hearing people looking at each other like, "What is this person doing?" It's like, "Hey, this is immersive learning," and it
Yeah.
was the best way to learn. What was I found a little bit challenging at the time that we were doing that, the cochlear implant thing was still kind of a new thing. It's very, very commonplace now. And
Do you know when cochlear implants were invented?
I think they first started their they first started working on them in like the late 70s, early 80s. But I don't think they came into prominence if like being approved in until the late 80s.
Okay,
And
interesting.
and why I was a desirable candidate is that I was 21 when I lost my hearing, and the FDA had not approved cochlear implants for children yet.
Oh, so anybody under 18 was a no-go.
And they had right, and the younger people they were trying to implant were mostly coming out of the deaf community, and in my opinion, that's a much harder road to go where you're 16, 18, 19 years old. You've lived those 19 years as a deaf person, and now you're trying to get an implant. So they were very. I mean, there was like the Cochlear Corporation had like a nonprofit wing that helped with the expense because it was a very, very expensive surgery and technology back then. Insurance did not cover it. Back then, that was kind of a weird thing that insurance looked at a cochlear implant like a hearing aid instead of looking at a cochlear implant like a prosthetic leg. Because obviously you give people prosthetic legs,
Right.
or wheelchairs or things like that. But hearing aids have always been because the ear can naturally degrade. And what happened is after I got, I don't know, maybe 8 years after I got my implant, somebody wound up suing the major insurance companies and won. And then all the insurance companies started supporting it because it was an indefensible argument.
Right.
Classifying something as this is prosthetic hearing, you don't classify that like a hearing aid.
Right. I mean, it's classic business interests. They had a financial interest to make the argument go in the other direction. They probably had power at the time. It wasn't a really well-known thing.
Yep.
They have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that their insurance. We were talking about insurance over breakfast this morning. So
yeah, exactly. And I get that, but the best part is when they lost the case, then every insurance company just went and started supporting it.
Yeah.
Because they knew, well, their case has been lost. If we don't follow suit, then we're gonna.
A precedent has been set.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
man. Yeah. So talk to me about those initial weeks after your injury happened. What did because you strike me, and just from what I know about you strike me as a pretty resilient person. Maybe it's the Norwegian blood. I don't know. Maybe it's
exactly.
that. I don't know. Maybe it's the size 15 shoe. I don't know what it is. But talk to me about what your spirit experienced after your injury. Was there like a period of deflation where you were despair is probably a strong word. But at what point did you because you went back to school, I mean, presumably 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you got back in the saddle. What was your experience?
And I would say the timing of that was probably the best thing. If I would have had my accident at the beginning of the summer.
May.
Yeah, or like right after school ended, I probably wouldn't have come back. But it happened right before, just 3 weeks before school. And I remember having a conversation with my mom, and she said, look, you can just come home, and no one's going to have a problem with that. Or you can give it a go. And if after a few weeks or a month, it's just not working, no one's going to have a problem with that either.
Yeah.
And and when I thought about that, yeah, that's where I was like, I'm like, well, if both if they both end the same way with only one difference, and that is if I just quit school now, I'd never know whether I could have finished.
Did it
It's
seem insurmountable at the time?
At times it felt that way, but I would say the best thing for me was that it wasn't a big school. It was a Christian school. All my friends were there, and that's what made it doable. I had all these people that I knew, and I knew they cared for me. I knew I could depend on them. And that was what made it not look impossible. You know?
Was that you had a supportive community around
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. That was where that's my point. If I would have just went home for the summer and been at home by myself and just really let the gravity of the situation sink in, it would have been worse.
Right.
But I was like, I didn't really get a chance. Or more importantly, I chose not to give myself a chance to let the gravity sink in quickly. So I'm thrown into classes and I got to figure out how to pay attention in class and taking notes and finding people to help me study. And it just, my life just got busy. It wasn't that I couldn't ignore it. It's not like something you can just ignore.
Right.
Because it's right there every second of the day. So I didn't ignore it. So I had to process it. But I was essentially deferring some of the processing of the gravity of the change. And I think that was probably better,
For you as a young 21-year-old man,
yeah.
on this path.
Probably where it hit the worst is I get through college, graduate, get home, get the implant, and then when they turned it on and it wasn't your
Well, because this was a new technology. It's not
Yeah.
like you could hop on YouTube and be
Yeah.
like, what is it like to get a cochlear implant?
right. And granted they were good at telling me, hey, look, this is what it's going to be like. But you have the hope that it's going to be better. And when they first turned it on and you're like, man, this is just nothing close to what I wanted it to be. Meaning, could it somehow get me back into my career that I was pursuing? And that reality that, no, it's never going to be that. That was probably the harder reality to sit with.
So there are probably only maybe 40 people that will listen to this to this interview initially, because it's still a pretty new show. But I imagine that there are people out there who are going through something difficult, right? Who maybe have sustained a really bad injury. Maybe a relationship didn't work out the way it was going. Maybe they got fired. Maybe they really screwed up at work and they lost their job, right? If you were to just take this moment and to step into those people's lives, what would you say to them?
I would say yes. It's not focus on the change that happened, right? Try to find whatever those anchors are around you, whether it's family, friends, your faith, those things that you know are unchangeable, because that's what happens when you go through something traumatic like this. Your life is changed forever. And that's always a hard thing to process and to deal with. And so that's what I would say, cling to those people that are solid, true, loving, and your faith as well. Because what too much happens is when you go through something traumatic like that, like, hey, your career's ending, your ability to even hear the person that you're talking to at a grocery store, you kind of lose faith in reality is what you can do. You can sit there and go, this isn't really fun anymore. you know, and so you have to cling to the people and the things that are good and true in your life, and in some ways, those people can't carry your burden for you,
Right.
but you let them come alongside. You know, I think that's probably it's an easy thing to just push people aside and say, I'm just gonna wallow in my pity, and 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 that's just what I'm gonna do. That's not the best thing to do. I mean, like, I know one thing that I did after I had my surgery, and I was hanging out at my mom's house, and I had a high school buddy that just is like, "Hey, let's go golf." You know, he got me out of the house,
Yeah.
and we went golfing, and went with his dad too. His dad was, you know, one of those those best sports dads where he was working night shift at a paper mill, but he never missed a single one of our basketball games. And I remember one time we're golfing, and I think I had my implant surgery had been done, but I don't know if I was had my implant on the exterior piece. And we were golfing, and someone had yelled four. And this sports dad I've known most of my life, his first thing, he comes and grabs me because he knew I couldn't hear it, to make sure that if there was something coming our way, that, you know, I didn't get hit.
Yeah.
Those are the type of people that you know.
Dude, what a guy.
Yeah.
I'm emotional hearing that
Yeah,
story.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. He was a great man, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the basketball referees didn't like him. He was always hard on them. Yeah, little segue. He got, even back when middle school, right? How many people come to a middle school basketball game? Well, just the parents, right? He sat on the other side where there's nobody sitting on the other side of the court. And he's heckling the refs because they weren't doing a good job, and they kicked him out.
Of a middle school basketball game?
Out of a middle school basketball game. Yeah. The only way I can answer the question is looking back on my experience, and it was those people that were around me, my classmates that helped me get through my last year, other people like Mr. Coe. That's what was my support system. You know, when you're feeling like your life is collapsing around you, you get people around you, and obviously, you know, I never really took pity. I'm like, God's got a plan. You know, I like I said to the yearbook people, I don't know what it is, but He does.
I love that, man. I think one of the things that is just really impressed on me, as you've told this story, are the touch points of the people in your life, like the friend that grabbed you and got you out of that pool. You know, this dad that grabbed your shoulder and said, "Hey, let's make sure this guy doesn't get hit by a flying golf ball."
Yeah,
that's amazing to me. I have this thought that when you have moments like this, and as I've done, you know, this is the fourth recording that I've done. And the thing that I've noticed the most is that I really enjoy getting in here and recording, you know, with whoever I'm talking about. I feel like I can go so deep in a way that I don't in other aspects. And there's something about, I've noticed this when I read stories that I've written to people. There's something about reading something out loud to somebody else that it changes the dynamic.
Yep.
Like it's almost like I, as the author, am able to see the work for the first time the way that somebody else might see it. There's something magical about that.
Yeah, it's like almost the difference from being behind the camera and then actually seeing it projected on the screen.
Yes. Yeah.
It's the same content,
just viewed from a different perspective. Yeah. And so one of the things that I've enjoyed is each one of these that I've done, I've typically gotten to have a meal, either breakfast or, you know, gone to get an ice cream or something with, you know, whoever I'm recording with. And the conversation beforehand to me is it's as special, if not more special, than the actual recording, because you get to have that person-to-person interaction. You have this moment where, you know, you're going into something, and I'm going to put this up on the internet. 25 people are going to watch it.
Yeah.
Thank you, by the way, for anybody who has watched this. But you have these conversations, like the conversation you and I were having earlier about work and dynamics and trying to navigate those kinds of things that are difficult, right? Yeah. Where you have these places where it's almost like your souls like touch, which is it's like a moment of I don't know what it is. It's like a becoming. Like a friendship is like becoming something more. And so that's one of the reasons I love doing this. But I have something that sort of ties into that is I sort of see, I wrote this down. I need to read this to you. This is something, I was thinking about this last night. So one of the things that it makes me think of, I wrote this last night. So each new life experience you have adds another dimension to your person. Mm-hmm. Right. So Haley and I have been through a few hard things the last year, especially that you and Julie have been able to step in the way that nobody else has been able to, just because of your experience. Mm-hmm. But the second part that I wrote was, it means that a new part of you is now present in another plane of existence. So one of the things that I've noticed as I've gotten older and experienced different life experience, I got married, spent those early marriage years. I had a really, difficult job situation, not necessarily that it was like horrible, but just hard, grueling work, for years. And that developed a different piece of me that exists in that new plane of existence, right? And just like every time one of those happens, I find there are people that step into my life who their person has developed and exists there as well. Yep. And it's like, it's less like your spirit gets, it's less like your person, like, it does expand, but it's more like it populates different dimensions. Yep. So the last part of this is like, so it means a new part of you is now present in another plane of existence. It's a place where unexpected friendship is waiting. Yep. So that's been my experience. Cause I met you years ago, probably whenever Olivia and I were in the musical Annie. Right. Right. I played the butler, and Olivia played Annie, the star of the show.
That's got to be at least 15 years ago.
I was 14. Yeah. So about 15, because I turned 30 yesterday.
Yeah. And I like what you said about the plane of existence, because the one thing that we have to not forget, it's easy to always just think about ourselves a little bit, but those connections with other people, we don't know the value of those connections. Mm-hmm. If I were talking to Mr. Coe right now, who he's passed on, and said, do you remember that time when I lost my hearing? We were playing some golf that summer, and I was going through all kinds of things. And the golf ball comes flying, somebody yells 4, and instead of you ducking, you went and grabbed me. He'd probably go, I don't remember that. But it meant something to me. So a lot of times, those connections that we do, we have to sit there and go, it may be, I maybe can't even remember it, but to someone, it maybe meant a lot.
Mm. I think about, I asked you, what would you say to people who are going through a very difficult time, and I think the other part, of the 25 people that will watch this audience, are like, how can you step in to a situation where somebody else is going through something, I'll use the word catastrophic. Yeah. Gabriel and I were talking about this a little bit on our the last recording that I did. We were talking about grief. And how, his mom and then Rachel's dad had passed away recently. And some of the most profound moments where people stepped in to help them, Gabriel was telling me, was that when people were like, hey, I'm bringing food to your house. What time should I drop it off? Yep. They didn't send the text, hey, let me know if I can do anything for you. Yep. And it's like being close enough to somebody to be able to be like, I don't think that you're actually in a space to be able to process and tell me what you need. But I'm going to look at your life and see okay, where can I step in to fill the gaps? Yep.
And I think, I think sometimes the ladies have a better sense of some of those things. But the truth is, and maybe it's just a male thing too, where we want to there's a problem. Let's go solve it. Where I think the best thing, truly, when someone's going through something traumatic, it's just what you said. You just do what you can to support them. You don't burden them with the questions.
Because I feel like there's a time for that, but it typically comes later.
Yep. And maybe it's because, like when our daughter was born, my mother-in-law, for the first 3 weeks, she just came over every day, and usually with a bag of groceries, and she would make some food. I mean, she was a great cook, so she'd make food, and next thing I know, she's down in the laundry room doing some laundry, and if she needed some, hey, Warren, where's this, that, and she just did. She didn't ask, she just did.
Yeah.
And I think that can be a good thing,
I feel like on average, women have a better instinct for that.
Yep.
I think than us guys do.
Yep.
We're like, hey, shoulder slap.
Yep.
Good to see you.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, I've learned so much from Haley when it comes to things like that. Like just stepping in or just being like, oh, I'm just going to do this little organizational help.
Yep.
That may not seem like a big deal, but to whoever, is in that situation, it's huge.
Yep.
I heard do you know who the podcaster Chris Williamson is? Have you heard of his channel? He runs one called Modern Wisdom.
Okay.
Yeah, anyway, part of the Manosphere with, Rogan and Diary of a CEO,
right.
all those guys. He was talking about obsession recently, whether it has to do with like an idea or a person. And the quote that he had was, obsession, like when it cools, becomes something like tempered steel. Mm-hmm. So the idea is that, so for me, doing this sort of recording thing, it's been a lot of fun. But the beginning of it has been sort of chaotic, and I feel like, freshly minted metal. It's moldable, right? And I've experienced this with other things in my life. But as I get more comfortable with it, maybe things become more rigid, but I feel like it's easier to come at it with more of a like a measured approach, where I can be like, okay, slow down for a second. Let's just look at this for a quick minute, before we, start making a bunch of hasty moves. I've had the same experience with writing, right? When I first started, it's sort of chaotic and things are fresh and words are flying and stuff like that. And then later, as you get more comfortable with whatever work you're working on, you come back to it and, and it's almost like you switch into a different brain mode and you're like, okay, where is my editor, where your editor brain comes in, and you're like, okay, let's look at this critically and see like, okay, what's good, what's not, this we need to cut, this we can keep, this we need to tweak. And I think relationships are also a little bit like that. Like, I don't, like when a relationship is new, a romantic relationship, when Haley and I got together, it was, fun and, you're young and just having a good time, and it was so exciting, and you get those butterflies in your stomach, you're all nervous to go hang out. And then as you get more comfortable in that relationship, it's almost like, the honeymoon phase, dies down. But it's almost to me like that's when the real relationship comes to the surface, and you start to have those years with that person. And I think it was you that told me that, especially as a married couple, when you go through something difficult and you rely on God, like the waves might get more choppy, but your anchor goes deeper.
Yep.
So I've noticed the same thing with friendship. Is that as you live more life experience, and if that friendship doesn't break because of the difficulties around it, it actually becomes a stronger bond.
Yeah, and I think that's a very good quote, because it does, that structure does build over time, and that's why, whether it's friends or family that you haven't seen for a while, but you had that time together and it created that structure that you can come back together, and it's like nothing ever changed. It's like you just step right back into it. Where when it's a relationship that never had a chance to build that structure, it's, you got to kind of start over again. I mean,
right. I wonder if that's the difference between those friendships that, like, whenever you see them, you just pick back up. like you'd never
Yeah.
left.
Yeah.
Do you have relationships like that from like your college or young adult days that have lasted throughout the decades?
Yeah, and I have that exact example. So I had a a number of close college friends. One of whom, when I was in college at the time, he had been at college for a little bit, but then he was doing some working. But I stayed close with him because he was like a bus driver, so he would always drive the choir bus when we would go on choir tours. So we got close after that, and then after I graduated, I moved into a house with him and some other friends, and I kept. He kept in touch with me probably better than I kept in touch with him, but he organized a men's reunion from college. It's like at least 30 years for most of us.
Yeah.
And this was like February of 2020, right? Where COVID hadn't really started
It was like right
cranking,
before.
but it was right there. And so yeah, and I hadn't seen him it had been well over a decade since I'd seen him. And he picks me up at the airport, and it's just like nothing changed because we had some really good relationships. And of course, he was one of those friends that was there when my accident happened, and those things that caused that structure to harden into something that was durable.
It's like if your relationship is like hot steel, it's like the thing that pours cold water
Yep.
on that. It hardens.
Yep. And so he and of course a lot of the guys that were at this reunion I knew, and a lot of them, kind of to your situation here, the ones that I was the closest with, it was just like yesterday. But then there were people that were their classmates of mine that I knew, and we maybe had a bunch of conversations, but we never quite got that deep structure. It was like, "Hey, how you doing?" And they were like, even though everyone in that group spent essentially the same amount of time, we were all at college in the same years. It just showed the depth of the relationships. Which ones had anchors and which one didn't. And I'm not saying
Not that they weren't good relationships or
no.
bad people.
It's just those guys maybe they graduated. This actually was true. Some of those guys that I knew from the dorm days, but they graduated the year before my accident, so they weren't there for that. And so they didn't have that context.
Yeah. I was talking with Christian Matney, or Nick. I think Nick is his first name. I knew him by Christian when we were growing up. But they're doing the van life thing. They've got their YouTube
Right.
channel. They're doing like a web like documentary series right now, just on the American dream and how that's changed over time. Pretty interesting. But he and I were talking that when we became friends, it was such a just like formative time in our lives. The end of high school into like the early college years. That was when we really like got to be close friends. And there's something about that time that's so like, I don't know, I guess formative is the right word.
Yeah.
That it bonds you to people.
100% that. And even though later in life, when you've gone through all those formative years and you've got married and you have children, you still can develop deep relationships, but it is different when those anchors of a relationship came during a very formative period.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's why when people think, oh, it's a childhood friend, they know what that means. That means that someone's known you through all those years where you have grown and changed and everything. As opposed to the childhood friend that, you lived in that town and they were your best friend for a couple of years, and then you moved. You probably can't have much of a relationship with them if you haven't kept it up, because they were only there for a little piece.
Right.
Even though you probably remember them very well. I have those kids I remember from second, third grade. Haven't seen them since, because life's changed. But they were there, at an important time.
Yeah, it's interesting. And then you have sort of like the reverse effect where you have, because I have friends that I grew up and was very close friends with for 6, 7, 8 years, But then sometime around the end of high school, it was like the values that we had in life, and we were all young and stupid and doing this stuff. But the values that we had in life, the decisions that we made, sort of drove a wedge between us as we started walking different paths of life. Whereas like emotionally, like I still care a lot about those people, but we just didn't really spend time together. So it was almost like the opposite effect, that it was like that friendship started to cool and there was nothing that really tempered it, and that it sort of started to fall apart.
Yep.
And I still love those people, dearly, but just because of the way that our lives were changing, the decisions that we were making, the values that we were choosing to hold dear, those relationships, they sort of fell apart. Not badly, but just, they just sort of fell off.
Yeah.
It's an interesting dynamic.
And there's also something about formative years, and, especially if you got young children. I didn't realize this till not long ago, where I'm like, I remember as a kid thinking, when is Christmas going to come? And it felt like it took forever. And then you go talk to Grandpa, and Grandpa's telling stories and about something, and you're like, maybe that was like 4 years ago. Why are you talking about that like it was yesterday? And it wasn't until I put it in a math perspective. I'm like, hold on, that 4-year-old waiting for Christmas, of their current life experience, they're having to wait 25% of that life experience to get to Christmas.
Yeah.
That's a big percentage. And that's why, I think college hits at a good time where, hey, you're 18, 19, 20, 21, and a year of college is, 1/20th of your life. Where you get in your 50s, another year is a 150-something of your life. Or, those in our family that thankfully are still around in their 80s and 90s, I mean, another year is almost a 100th of their life. It's a very, very small slice.
I wonder if that explains why time seems to speed up as you get older.
Yeah. And I think that's how I would explain it. I don't know if that's true scientifically, but...
Yeah, I heard there was a guy, again, it was Chris Williamson's podcast, Modern Wisdom, that I really enjoy. He was talking to a guy named Dave Evans, who I think he's a Stanford guy, that he works in a program that they call like Design Your Life, which he's a Christian, and he teaches in this program where they take people and they're like, hey, like let's look at your life and how do you design something that you're not just going through the motions. How do you develop meaning in your life and find, your calling, that kind of thing. I kind of forgot where I was going with that.
Perception of years in life.
Yeah.
And
yes. That was it. So Dave Evans, he was talking to him, and the phrase that he had was that your experience of your life, much of your experience of life is the story that you tell yourself. Right. And so when I think about, therapy or people who go to who have like a life coach, things like that, a lot of times what you're doing in there is you're taking the experiences of your life and you're being like, okay, let's organize this into a narrative that's understandable, so we can place the things that are very emotionally charged in our lives. We can fit them into the puzzle and understand like what they were. So, when I talk to you about your experience losing your hearing and going through that stage in your life, it strikes me that your experience of that, is very, you know where that fits, right? Mm-hmm. And I think your faith has a big role to play in how you organize your experiences, and you're not bitter. That's what's very striking to me about this, about your experience. Is that what do you?
I think that's absolutely correct. I mean, if I didn't have my faith that told me that God has a plan for my life, I would have been bitter, you know? It would have been so easy to sit there and go, everything I worked for, just gone. This life sucks, and just go down that route. But I had to sit there, and that's a lazy way to address things. I mean, it's the easy path, but it just felt like that would just be such a destructive path to go on. So I was like, okay, if God has something else for me, I'm excited to see what that is.
Yeah, yeah. It's like we know not the way.
Yeah.
You know?
And the hard part about that is you have no idea of knowing what shape or form that could be. And I had, again, it was a great safety net to be on a Christian campus after my accident, but a lot of people would say, God's got something better for you. And yes, because the scripture says that, but we know that better is in his view, not your own.
Right. Did that ring hollow at the time?
I wouldn't say it rung hollow. It was just a little harder to acknowledge that something better could be there, or it was just hard to get my hands around that. I mean, I was gonna wait and see. What does that better mean? I was like not wanting to define things for God at all.
Right.
I'm like, okay, let's see what he's got to say. Let's see what path he puts me on. And I did have some people would ask a very, very good question, and they would say, if you had to do it all over again, would you want your accident to have happened or not? And of course, in my current experience, I would say, well, yeah, I probably would want it to happen again because it led me to my wife and a wonderful life that we've had together. And so that's the most joy that I've had in life is in those people that God brings into your life to be your family. So, yeah, no, I wouldn't want to go and do a do-over and
Yeah.
maybe mess with that.
It's sort of interesting because I would delineate between the things that you chose that led you down the path that your life has gone, and the things that have happened to you that you didn't choose.
Yeah.
This was another thing. This guy Dave Evans was talking about. He's saying, people ask him like, "Do you have any regrets?" And he's like, "No." And they're like, "Well, would you do anything different?" He's like, "Absolutely. I would do everything different." But life isn't like that.
Right.
That's not how life is. Yeah. But changing. Yeah, I think that's interesting. You wouldn't change necessarily the things that wouldn't happen to you, but I just turned 30. Like I can already see things in my 20s that I probably would do differently had I the chance to do it again.
And that's a good clarification on the question, because a lot of times when people ask, would you have done anything different? They're asking, would you have wanted different outcomes? And no, I wouldn't want a different outcome. But yes, if you're looking at it, would you have changed how you did things in your 20s? Well, yeah, but it doesn't mean I want a different outcome,
Yeah,
So,
I don't know. It's hard. That's sort of one of the mind-boggling things that when we sit here, when you have those moments to just sit in something and pontificate, that you're like, would I change anything? Because all of the things that have happened to me and that I've chosen have led me to the person that I am today.
Yep.
Now, I imagine my experience, if my life was a train wreck, I might feel differently.
Right.
Right. But when I look back, especially on my 20s, I don't feel like I wasted my time so far. I got married, when I was 21. Man, I remember this lady tore into me when Haley and I got engaged. She was like, "What are you doing? You are so young. You're going to screw your life up. You're going to get married. You're going to have kids. You're going to have this divorce, all of these things." She was just like telling me about how her life, had gone on. And I don't doubt that that was her experience. But I sort of looked up at her and I was like, "Can you finish cutting my hair, please?"
Yeah.
But that was that lady's experience,
Yeah.
Whereas I look back in the last 10 years and getting married at 21, was, I think, probably one of the best things that could have happened to me.
Yep.
For maturity and growth and being able to partner with the person that I love the most in the world, and saying, like, to heck with everybody else. Like, you are my person.
Yep.
Yeah, commitment, man. I'm not afraid of it.
Yeah, and with Julie and I, it was the same. We were 23, and what was great about that is, here I am. I've got no career potential. I'm going to have to, whatever God puts in my way is what it's going to be. Julie was, working some jobs, but wasn't really pursuing a specific career. So it was a good time for two people to just say, let's just go and march life together and see what God has for us. And it worked great for us.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that it's not good for the people that wait a little longer and they get an established career. That's good for them. But for us, it worked because essentially there was no other baggage. It was just the two of us with, everything in front of us, and
Julie, Warren, and God riding off into the sunset.
Exactly.
To make life work.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Do you think there's like a benefit to because I know in our community here in Central Texas, right, it was pretty common for a lot of us to get married younger, I think, than the national average.
Yeah.
Whereas, I have friends back in California, that they are friends that have come from California. They've got lots of friends back there that are in their 30s. They are, barely struggling with a job. They're still living at their parents' house and they can't start their life. It's sort of a prolonged adolescence is the way that I think about it. Nothing against those people, but that's just the reality of it. I do wonder if there's something beneficial, like to just saying, like, no, you're my person, like, let's do this, and committing, being able to go.
Yeah, and I would respond this way, is that with the people that are saying, you're too young, it's too early, I don't see that being proven, right? Because I've seen it with you, seen it with us, where people that get married young, and of course, we're talking about being married young, which is old compared to 100 years from ago.
Right.
If they were getting married at 16 and 17, that was a common thing. So we're using a more current definition of young.
Yeah.
All those things that the argument to wait, I don't see the benefit. I mean,
Yeah.
That's so I sit there and say one is not better than the other. That's the argument that's trying to be made. Is
Right.
waiting is better, and I just
I think it depends on the person, you know?
I don't see that as what the argument they're trying to make is that it's a blanket truth. No, I think waiting for some people is what works for them. Getting married early for some people is what works for them. One is not better than the other.
Yeah, well, I imagine it was true for Haley and I imagine it was true for you and Julie, is that, in hindsight, we got married for the right reasons.
Yep.
Whereas, like, I know many people whose, early marriages did not work out, but I think when they've looked at it in hindsight, they didn't get married for the right reasons.
Right.
It was like they were in the military, they found somebody they liked, and they were like, hey, if we get married, we can make more money, because, we're married and into this bureaucracy, that happens. Whereas, I don't know, I'm sure you've had this experience, but I have met like a 21-year-old recently, and I was like, who let us do that? It's like, who did that? But, and when I look back on it, I don't think that everybody was looking at me and saying like, oh, they're good. I think everybody was probably looking at me and Haley, and they were like, okay, they'll probably be okay.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because I was a silly, fun-loving guy.
Yeah.
I didn't take life too seriously. I took it seriously in the right ways. Right. But I think that when people were looking at it, they're like, yeah, they won't fall apart, and she's going to keep them in line.
Yeah, and I mean there is good wisdom in families that know each other. You know, I mean, with Julie and I, her family we were on the West Coast. Her family was in Ohio, and first time I met her family is when I'm asking her dad to marry her, and so that was a little bit of a challenge. But I think, especially when you're talking that younger marriages, when it's between families that know each other, then the wisdom that exists in those families and the parents, yeah, if there is a concern there, okay, then they can maybe highlight that and whatever that concern might be. But if the families know each other and they're looking at these two young kids as
we
I was
were.
a kid when I was in my early 20s and go, they're going to be all right.
Yeah.
Then there you go.
Well, it's like that's almost the role of like grandfathers, fathers, and brothers is to like, especially of the girls, like you see that situation, and if it's something that's not good, that's their role. Is like, I sort of see that as myself as like I had older sisters, so it's a little bit different. But as a dad, Haley and I are gonna have a little girl in July. I imagine if she's stepping into a situation with a guy that I'm like, that's not good.
Right.
Like it is part of my responsibility to be able to step into that. I don't know. Maybe my perspective on that will change over time, but that's how I see it right now.
No, I think it is. It's especially when you're talking a fatherly role of a daughter. Yeah, that is your the role that you're supposed to play in protecting that daughter until she's married to the man that's taking over that role.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if part of that protection is, hold on, I'm going to share some insight and wisdom in this relationship. Okay.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's received well.
Which I feel like culturally that's pretty like our culture doesn't like that.
No, because the current culture tells the young people that your parents are dumb or goofy, and we could go into the whole Hollywood perspective of the dad,
Right.
that he doesn't know anything, and so the culture does set up these young kids. Hey, I'm 21, I can do what I want now, and everything in the culture has told me that, Dad, you are not a good figure for me to take advice from. And it's sad.
It is.
I'm glad that there's some people in the entertainment industry trying to change that, trying to not let those type of stereotypes be pushed.
Tim Allen comes immediately to my mind.
Yeah, yeah, and that's, but yeah, there is. The dads are like, why is my daughter treating me like this? Why doesn't she want my advice? Well, you're battling the culture, not just her.
Yeah. Yeah, I think parenthood scares me the older I get, and we've talked about this before, right? Because I feel that responsibility very heavily. With my son Todd, and now with our baby girl that's gonna be here this summer. That I think the fundamental like responsibility and then fear that I have as a parent is that like how do I prepare my children for the world as it's changing and as they're going to step into adulthood? Because I don't think anybody really knows what the advent of AI technology is going to do to our society. You have people, on one hand that are saying, we give it way too much credit. It can't put the right number of fingers on like a hand if you're trying to generate an image, which right now, that's true.
Yep.
But on the other hand, you have people that are like, no, we're in the beginning of a technological industrial revolution on the AI front. And I don't know which one is true.
Yeah.
Or whether it's going to, meet somewhere in the middle, but lean heavily one way or the other. So for me, I have a big fear of like, how do I as a parent, one, keep myself educated so that I can help my children navigate in this, in this brave new world that's coming up. How do you think about those kinds of things?
I think the hardest thing is teaching your children to think for themselves. That's and I think that's part of the reason, we homeschooled is it not only teaching them to think for themselves, but teaching them how to learn. Because if you have a child that is basically taught that they can't learn on their own and they must just depend on whatever data that's given them, like from AI, or it could just be, web search. That's you aren't smarter than the browser is giving you data. That's wrong. That's teaching the wrong thing. It's teaching them to be dependent on someone else's viewpoint, and whether it's the viewpoint of AI or whether it's the viewpoint of their friends. And I think that is I'm grateful because we had one child to take through homeschooling, and you really don't know how successful homeschooling is until they're done, and I was really happy to hear, Olivia goes off to college and she's asking questions in class and she's having professors going, "You're homeschooled, aren't you?" And even taking it a step further where the clearly they've seen the evidence of homeschoolers essentially being taught to come to your own conclusions, and they know how to learn themselves, go through the action of research and study and learning, to where one professor's like, "Okay, now this is not going to be an easy exam. You guys need to study well. If you don't know how to study, talk to Olivia. She's homeschooled." I'm like, I found that a little presumptuous on the professor's part. But if they had seen that multiple times, the homeschoolers coming through, clearly showing the ability to learn a subject without, strict guidance, that is not just a schooling principle.
Right.
That's a life principle.
I wonder how much of that is. I wonder how much of that is like the homeschooling spirit, right? And like the experiences you have that you learn, basically nature versus nurture here, or the kind of people that would decide to homeschool, how much of a genetic component you have in that kind of thing. Because it's probably not zero. You know what I mean?
I think there maybe is some to that, but I also would say that I think, because I wasn't homeschooled, I was put through the public school. It was a small country school district, and I think that there's just been a shift from the way the public school used to educate and homeschool, and the public schools have just shifted in their strategy. Homeschool hasn't gone the other way, which was in my public school experience, the teachers had autonomy, the school had autonomy. The whole Department of Education wasn't created until the 80s, and I was almost out of high school at that point, before it got heavy-handed on the school districts. And so that I remember teachers basically teaching a lot of the things that we taught in homeschool, which was, hey, here's the chapter, you go home, you study it, do the worksheets, and I'm talking 7th, 8th grade here. Go do the worksheets, and there's going to be a quiz next week. It was, you go through it. It wasn't hand-holding that I see sometimes in public schools. And maybe the most important thing, because I was a good student, is and maybe it was because I was in smaller school district, that the teachers would, even within a given class, they would have something to keep the interests of the better students without losing maybe the students that were having a little harder time with the topic. Where I think that's, in my opinion, that's one of the benefits of homeschooling. You don't get that we can't give you, the better student, what you need because we've got a common denominator, or the inverse, right? Oh, here's a homeschool child that needs very specific work in an area that maybe the public school's like, well, we can't give that to you either.
Right.
So I think there's...
To where the bright kids tend to check out, and the kids that are having a hard time learning can't keep up. And everybody in the middle, they're probably just focused on having fun anyway.
Right.
Right, because you're just surrounded by your peers. Yeah. One of the things I think that's a huge benefit of specifically the homeschooling model, and, I'm biased because I was homeschooled and had a very good experience. You're probably biased because you had, a daughter, but I think the whole bias thing kind of gets overplayed.
Right.
The thing I like to use as an example is sometimes, I'm talking about something and somebody's like, oh, well, because you're, a straight white man, who's a conservative and grew up in a particular, in like a, a fairly, well-off situation in life. I'm like, okay, but like if you did not grow up with all those things, aren't you just biased but in the exact inverse direction? So the whole bias argument that people bring up kind of annoys me. It's a soapbox that I'll try to stay off of. But the thing I was going to say was that the thing that I think is so helpful about homeschool is you have these intergenerational relationships, right? I mean, you're 25 years my senior,
right?
And you become a very good friend.
Yeah.
Right. And I had great relationships with people that are 5, 6, 7 years older than me and people that were 5, 6, 7 years younger than me. And so, whereas from what I understand in the homeschool or in the public school system is you're very much in a strata of your peers. And I experienced that when I went to college, where there wasn't that much like, the freshmen were with the freshmen. Sometimes you had sophomore friends, but you didn't really hang out with the seniors all that much, except for, very specific ones. So I do wonder about how much of that like intergenerational relationships helps the development of a person. But also if you're hanging out with grandpa that doesn't trust the government all the time, you learn to be critical.
Yeah. and that's, I think that's a key element there because one thing that homeschooling does just by default is it builds individuality. That you are not a member of a class. And the class does good, does bad together. It's not a collective. It's you. Did you do your homework or not? It's you.
Yeah.
Did you learn or not? It's you. And I think that might be one of the biggest issues people have with homeschooling. I don't think ever had someone spell it out that way. But if homeschooling builds individuality so strongly, then what do we see in our culture? Our culture loves to class people. You're a white male, and that means I can attribute all these traits to you. I can class you up, and then now I can box you. Where a homeschooler would probably, that's a foreign concept to them. Don't put me with that.
Don't put me in a box.
Yeah, don't put me in a box because I haven't been in a box. And even if you just physically think about my experience in the public school, you were put in a box because you were in Mrs. Smith's 4th grade class and it was in room 104, that box.
Mm-hmm.
Even if that's not intentionally taking away your individuality, it kind of does,
Yeah, those Haley's in my experience when we went to college was that neither one of us are particular joiners. We have the inverse response. Somebody's like, "Oh, you're part of this group. You need to do this." We're like, "How about I just not be a part of that group?"
Right.
Then it's like, I don't know. It's an instinctual like, no. You're not going to put me in that box. If you want me to do something, I will steer hard in the other direction just because that's my instinct, even if there's nothing particularly wrong with that. I don't know. So I do think you're right that it's sort of ingrained in you in the homeschooled model.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, that's been a new revelation to me. I mean, when I hear people do the boxing, where they say, I'm just happy that I'm being accepted as a culture group A, culture group B, culture group C man.
Mm-hmm.
And
A car man, a
and
tobacco man.
yeah, and you know what I would say to them? I would say, let's say their name is Tom. I would say, don't you want to just be known as Tom? Don't you just want people to know you?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you want to be known as culture group A, B, C man?
Mm-hmm.
That's
Yeah.
that's not you. That's you ascribing to these culture groups and then somehow eliciting some type of reaction, because that's where your point. Homeschoolers, that's a foreign concept to them.
Yeah, we were always kind of outsiders anyway.
Yeah, you and in an individual way as well. You didn't actually get to the structure of education didn't let you build these cliques and things that somehow you need to be a part of that and get that. I'll give you one example. I mean, this was our 6th grade, right? Where there was that strata in school. And here's where some kids in school that I wasn't really friends with, but they were maybe the more well-known or the more well-liked kids. And for some reason, I just was hanging out with them a little bit at lunch. And I'm like, okay, well, maybe I'm friends with them. And one day after lunch, we're, walking like to the gym or something. And it was the 6th grade. One of the kids in that group turns to me and says, "Why are you following us?" I mean, it was just like, and it was an immediate revelation. Oh, I was trying to be culture group A, and it didn't give me the value that I thought. I thought, as a 6th grader, thought that somehow there was some value with me being connected with that group of people. And I'm not saying there isn't.
Because networking is a thing. It's good to have friends and people that you can rely on, like we were talking about earlier.
Right. But defining who you are by bigger terms than your individuality.
What an American perspective.
Yeah. But I want to understand what is the value of that? Why do you boil yourself down? We're all individuals. Why would you boil yourself down to some common denominators and define yourself just by that?
Right.
You
It's like looking for an identity.
Yeah. And let it just be who you are.
Right.
I mean, because that's how I introduce myself to people. Hey, I'm Warren. I don't sit there and say, hey, before I even say my name, hey, I'm a cochlear implantee, and I actually lost my hearing through, and I'm doing all this group connectivity thing. No, I introduce myself as who I am because I want people to know me as Warren. What that picture of under that name, well, that gets as much detail as the relationship allows to fill in. But I don't want it to start at the top as, deaf guy, implantee, and then someplace down. Oh yeah, I think his name was Warren. No, the individual is the top. It should be.
Right, that's who we are. I think it was a C.S. Lewis quote where he's talking about how like the more we become, the more Christ-like we become, and the closer we walk with God, the more of ourselves we become. Yeah, that there's something about that walk that you're not alone. Like you're walking that walk with God, becoming Warren.
Right.
And that the more you walk with God, the more your individuality comes out because you're not tied to these labels. that feel safe. And I guess if we were going to look at this through like an evolutionary psychological lens for, that perspective for a second, it's part of being in the group, being in the tribe. It feels safe, and maybe that's what it is, looking for that identity.
Yeah.
The goth kids, the theater kids.
Yeah.
I feel like people are more prone to that in their like teenage years too.
Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with having those connections. I'll be perfectly clear about that, right? We saw that this morning. Here's all these car guys come in for breakfast together.
Nice cars too.
Those guys aren't lacking identity by being, they just have a common interest and they're together, and that's great. But if one of those guys we would have stopped them, we were having our own breakfast, but if we would have stopped them and I say, hey, how you doing? And the guy says, I'm Camaro guy. I would be like, okay, but there's a bunch of Camaro guys here, but who are you?
Right.
Because I'm sure all of them would have started with, I'm Joe, and I've got the yellow 66 Camaro out there and he'd tell us all about it, and that would be great. But it's
one of the things that I think is really interesting. I think when we're talking about identity, and searching for a place that you feel like you belong, and going back to this conversation about, how when you have hard things that happen in your life, I think those groups feel like they feel like an anchor. They feel like a safe space that you can be in. But there's a gentleman who he's with Ben Shapiro's company. His name's Andrew Clavin. I don't know if you know who he is.
I do know Andrew.
I like the show that he does. He's offensive in the best way possible. It's so fun. One of the things that he talks about is, when it comes to meaning in our lives, and this is an idea that's tied to a different author that I want to bring up later, is that he talks about this idea that one of the things that is the human journey, right, is to take the things that have happened to us and to find meaning in them. And there's a thing that he says that I don't really know if I agree with it, but it's that not everything in our lives happens for a reason, but everything that happens acquires a reason. And I'm not really sure where I land on that, because I do believe in the sovereignty of God, right? But I do believe that there are certain things that happen to us that it's almost like God calls us in that moment to, like, this is a thing that has happened, or a situation you were born into. It's part of like God's calling on our lives to find the meaning in the things that happen to us. I find that a fascinating concept, and it seems like you have done, that's something that I see very evident in the way that you even just tell your story, is that you see the meaning, that your accident almost led you directly to Julie.
Yeah. And you're right. And what was helpful to me is, even in the Bible, you've got those stories where here's Joseph, a kid who loves his dad, maybe irritates his brothers, and gets sold into slavery. And people don't realize, he gets sold into slavery, gets put in jail, and the story's only a few chapters. You're like, it couldn't be long. No, he was in jail for 13 years. And then comes out of it and given the gift of interpretation and becomes second in command over all of Egypt, right? And so that was clear evidence to me that, hey, not everything in a life that God has his hands on, right? Scripture tells us as believers, God has his hands on us. But here we saw in the Old Testament, clearly with Joseph, and he even says it to his brother, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. By the path that what God did out of it. So I do think there is, because we can't, like with our Old Testament view, see the whole story from beginning to end. and go, oh, well, that was obvious. We're living it like Joseph lived it,
Yeah.
He answers the dreams of the baker and the cupbearer, and they didn't do anything about it.
I wonder how easy it would have been for Joseph to just like have tapped out in any of those years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I wonder if like this is why when I think about living and the hard things that we experience in life, how there's a reason that God calls us to be strong and courageous. Because even just living life sometimes feels like you got to like gather your courage and then just like get out of bed.
Yep.
Some days feel that way. So I wonder how much of that calling is there. And there's that old phrase, pray for God to save you and then row like hell.
Yeah.
And row for the shore.
Yeah. Yep.
That there's a calling for us to get up every day and keep going. Keep the faith that life is worth living. Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I want to talk about, if you're good, there's something I want to talk about success for a second. This has become a very interesting concept to me as I'm stepping into this stage in life, because I've hit the point where I've gone through sort of my 20s. This is a very big, developed, like the person that I was when I was 20 years old and the person that I am today, having just turned 30. I'm a very different person. I'm still Philip. I'm still me, but I've gone through this very compressed, I think, developmental time in my life. Right. It's been very interesting. And I've started to think a lot about success because I'm a person that I want to be successful, and when it comes to this YouTube thing, it's a side gig. I'm having fun talking to people that are fun, having fun conversations. But I'd love to grow this YouTube thing into something that it's a platform that I can help encourage people to step out in the midst of the hard things in life and live courageously, and try to be the people that God has called them to be, and take the light that they have in their hands, out into the world, in whatever way that that they can do that. But I came across this quote from, do you know who Viktor Frankl is? He wrote the book Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So he has a quote. It's actually in the foreword of his 1992 version, or the it was some foreword that he wrote for one of the later versions. And he's talking about success. Basically, he's saying that he tells all of his students this, and it goes, don't aim at success. The more you aim at it and make it a target, the more you are going to miss it. For success, like happiness, cannot be pursued. It must ensue, and it does so as the unintended side effect of one's dedication to a cause greater than oneself, or as the byproduct of one's surrender to a person other than yourself. Happiness must happen, and the same holds true for success. You have to let it happen by not caring about it. I want you to listen to what your conscience commands you to do, and go on to carry it out to the best of your knowledge. Then you will live to see that in the long run I say, success will follow you precisely because you had forgotten to think of it. So when I think about that quote, there's a difference between I guess the question I have for you following up is like, what is the difference between pursuing success and pursuing excellence? Do you know what I mean? Like, because there's a difference between those two. So as I'm stepping in this point in my life, I'm like, I want to be a successful person. I don't want to, struggle, all of my life with, everything. I would like to have some degree of success, but it seems to me like there's a difference where success seems to be something that a lot of times is out of our control. Whereas excellence is something that you pursue just to do. Does that make sense?
I think the key element there is success is not easy to define. A lot of people say they're pursuing success, but they're actually pursuing someone else's definition of it.
Mm.
Excellence is much easier to define. It's more quantifiable,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what he's getting at in the quote is, in a roundabout way, if I was understanding it correctly, he's essentially trying to say success is something that is generally defined by others. So ignore it. Because what happens is that their definition of it is going to keep changing. In the way, I mean, we've all heard so many times about Hollywood actors and actresses that make $25 million a movie, and you would think everyone around the world knows who they are. And then people ask them, are you happy? Did success, whatever definition that is, did that give you happiness? And most of them say no. That the money didn't give it. But then when they do go to define what did make them successful or happiness, what they really are giving is a definition of, I was excellent in my pursuit.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference because
Right.
if you're being excellent in what you're doing, like this, YouTube experience, if you feel like you're doing it excellently, then that's bringing you joy, it's bringing you satisfaction. Where the guy who's making, $1 million a second, but his life is terrible. There's no joy there. He's pursuing more success, not just saying, I'm going to just be excellent at what's in front of me.
Right. Well, it's like the CEOs that, they're making all this money, leading this big company. They've got the prestige, but they're on, they take a pill to focus. They take a pill to sleep, and they start, each evening with a glass of scotch.
Yeah.
Because that's the only way they can come down off the work day.
Yep. And that's not, when I look at that, I say, that's not success. And so I think I love the quote, but the way I'm taking the quote, my takeaway is that because success is so difficult to define, don't worry about it.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because so part of the quote that was before that is he's talking about this guy. So Viktor Frankl, he was a Holocaust survivor. He was, I believe, he was either Austrian or German. I can't remember, but he and his parents and his wife were all taken into concentration camps, and his wife and his parents and his brother, everybody died. He was the only one that made it, but he was already a doctor, a psychologist, right? So when he went into the concentration camp experience, he sort of had this, like, his intellect sort of pulled out of his head, and he sort of looked at it from like a clinical perspective, and he attributes that to be one of the reasons that he was able to survive that experience, was he was able to intellectualize it, right? And so when he comes out of the Holocaust experience, having survived the concentration camps and starts to recover, he has this idea called logotherapy, which is basically, helping people find meaning in the difficulties of their life, the tragedies. How do you find the meaning in that? But his most famous book was this book that he wrote called Man's Search for Meaning, where he outlines that experience. It's a great book. Anybody that is interested in that kind of thing and likes, neuroscience and finding meaning in life, would highly recommend Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. But what he does is he wrote this book, his entire experience, and he originally wrote it to be released anonymously because he didn't really want he thought that the best way for people to understand the story was to take the name out of it. But he had several people and his publishers and everybody's like, no, you need to put your name in this. And he was like, okay, fine. He did. Most successful book he ever wrote, right? And he didn't write it to be a successful book. He didn't even really, from my understanding, I don't even think he really wanted to make money off of it. But it sold millions of copies over the decades. And it was still being reprinted in the 1990s. and it's still
Wow.
being reprinted today. And so his point is, and just like happiness, if you try to be like, you're like, I'm going to figure out how to be happy, you're not going to be very happy. And his point is that he did not write that book to be successful. He wrote it from a genuine place in his heart, and the success came precisely because he wasn't thinking about it. He wasn't planning. So I think it's sort of this idea of if you shoot to make something great or try to be successful in a work or write the next bestseller, I think it taints the creative process and people can smell it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's interesting for me to think about it, especially as I'm stepping into this decade of my life. How to properly approach those things.
Yep. Yeah. I think that translates not just from the individual perspective, but I even see it in the business world, right? Where instead of a business building and launching the product that they have to do, because it's what's everything in their being is what they want to go and they go do it. It's all, what are the competitors doing? What is happening in the industry? So let's try and make something that's kind of fitting what is the current. It's essentially trying to be successful with everybody else's definition. But what happens is the industry is not static. People's demands aren't static either, and so it's shifting and changing. So then your product then is chasing, per the quote, chasing something that it really is hard to go and get.
Right.
Which is why, and I keep telling people about this from a technology perspective, where people are like, why is Apple different? And I said, well, Apple doesn't sell technology. And they're like, what are you talking about? Of course they do. I said, look back to one of the very first successful products that they had globally. The first television ad for the iPod was what? Not a word was spoken. It's a guy walking along a sidewalk, and his shadow is dancing in the fence while he's walking. They were selling an experience. They weren't trying to succeed in something. They were saying, we want to make an experience for people. And the product was the outcome of trying to make that experience. It wasn't trying to be, it wasn't saying we're looking at the MP3 players out there in the market. How do we one-up them? No, they're like, we want this experience for our customer.
Yeah, we want it to be different.
And that was Steve Jobs' thing. He was very good at that. And then you saw all the other Apple products come out like that. And that's
why they've done pretty good.
That's where their success comes from. They didn't go pursue success. They had something they were passionate about, and they pursued the passion, which turned into success.
Now, you've probably seen this happen quite a bit in the computing industry, because so I guess we should tell people what you do for work.
Yeah.
Because that might paint this a little bit. So you're currently with HP. You were with Dell for a number of years. Yeah. Can you outline just very quickly sort of your career path?
Yeah. I mean, so I got into IT and partly because, I guess people with a musical mind, IT type concepts seem to work, and it did in my case. So that's how I got into that field, doing IT for a number of companies, and then got recruited to come down to Dell, worked there for 16 years, and then I've been at HP now for a couple of years. So all in that, my entire career has been PC technology centric. And so, yeah, it's been interesting to see how that PC, what is its objective? Its objective is to make the user more functional, more productive, a better experience, whether that's, a lot of my work was in the corporate world, right? Is that user able to do the work that they need to do and do it effectively, and a lot of it is, there are a lot of dependencies there, right? The PC company can only do so much if it's depending on Microsoft technology. So, but seeing the evolution of all of it, and at the end of the day, that's actually what it is what's making that user productive in the work that they're doing.
Right, but it's like I know part of what you've done is you've been a product manager for a while. A lot of does product management, at least in your world, does that tie in with the marketing side pretty tightly?
It's both, right? I mean, in some organizations, the product management is a function of the marketing organization, because ultimately, the professional term of a product manager is the person who owns the definition of the product so that it meets the customer's requirements. And so that's, as a product manager, you're the person who's engaging with the customers and identifying what the needs are, and then you're bringing it back and either modifying the product that you have in the market or creating a new one. So it is a marketing function, but then it also goes into the development process, because you have to write requirements in a way that are useful to the team that have to build the product.
Right. No, that makes sense. And so when you're interacting with a customer, right, how much of that, how often do you come into one of those conversations and the customer is like, well, we kind of need this, and you have to help them figure out what they want or like what they need?
That is a common occurrence. I mean, there have been more than one occasion where I would actually have someone maybe higher up in my leadership chain, and I'm talking to a customer. I saw that the customer just didn't really know what the best way to do something, and I would stop them and say, yeah, well, you're trying to do it this way, and that's not the best way to do it. And I would have my leader say, don't tell the customer what to do. And I'm like, well, I'm going to tell them when they're trying to use a solution that is not
Less
the
than
best.
optimal or ineffective.
Yeah, exactly. And I get the axiom, well, the customer's always right. Yes, in their objective.
A great rebuttal I heard to that was that anybody who ever says the customer is always right has never had to deal with a customer.
Right. And that's the thing. I mean, in their objective, if the customer comes in to your restaurant and says, I want to have a good meal, that they're absolutely right. If they didn't have a good meal, okay, well, then they didn't. But if a customer comes in and says, I want you to do this for me in this way, and we know technologically there's a better way, I'm going to tell them, well, there's a better way, and this is the path that we're on. So yeah, there are a lot of customers now that, especially as you get more, it used to be in my day when I was in IT for the company, the IT guy was the integrator. He was taking pieces and parts and making the solution. Now they just bring a solution in. And so it's easier for the customer to sit there and say, hey, you're the person who owns this solution. You tell me what I need.
This is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
What are the tools that we can make this that can make this happen?
Right. Because from technology companies that we've naturally said, hey, just let us do more and more and more and more and more of these things, to where now it's kind of like the difference between a pickup from the 70s and 80s. You open the hood, you can see all kinds of daylight coming through, and a brand new 2026 pickup truck, you open the hood, there's no daylight. You can't see anything.
It's all a mystery.
It's packed to the gills. That's the IT customer now. They lift the hood and they're like, I don't want to have to do anything. You just tell me how to drive this thing, and tell me if it's the right one for me.
I wonder how much of that is like intentional on the IT side, where you sort of like what I can't remember what that's called. So when a coder comes in and they specifically design a code to be really complicated so that they're the only ones that can work on it. There's a name for that, and I can't remember what it is.
I mean, there is
intentional obfuscation or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, there clearly companies will build stuff to work better together just with their stuff. I mean, even Microsoft does this. all their Office products and everything else, and they build stuff into the operating system to make the Microsoft experience work better. And same with HP, Dell, all the hardware vendors. I mean, even Apple, right? They do that, and they will do it also in a way that someone can't come and say, "I want PCs from Apple, HP, and Dell, and I want to be able to do the same thing across all of them the same way." No,
Ain't gonna happen.
no, they're going to have their uniqueness intentionally to make it a proprietary experience.
How are you seeing LLMs enter your specific work field in the technology side? Because from what I've seen, I get so annoyed at all of the AI ads that I keep getting. I don't know if it's because I screwed up my algorithm and now they have this profile of me and they're like, this guy likes to see this stuff. But I just get pumped with all of these, Zeely and ChatGPT and Grok and all of these to create stuff. It drives me crazy.
I mean, the team I'm working on now is currently doing some AI integration stuff for HP. And so we're right in the thick of that. I think I'm seeing AI kind of go on a path that I've seen before, where, and of course, these cycles start to speed up and get faster because people learn, oh, this is where it's going. And of course, people can talk about where AI is on the hype cycle, you know.
Yeah.
And so I think it's starting to come down the slope of the hype cycle, and there's getting some reality there. But there was a big thing in IT where it was like, hey, you bought all these expensive servers, you had them on your property, and you had to have a server room, and it had to be cooled, and it had to have enough power, and all these things. And it was like, hey, how about you just take all those servers and go put it in some big data center somewhere, and
Cloud computing.
yeah, and people would do that, or more recently, oh, hey, just put it all up in the cloud. It's all backed up. It's everything. And what happens is there's always a rationalization to that process. And I was involved in moving servers to a data center several states away, and what they found out, it just wasn't as cost effective. So they brought them all back. People did the same thing with cloud, where they're like, hey, move all the servers up to the cloud, and then the bill for all those cloud services was a lot more expensive than they thought it was going to be.
Cha-ching.
And so they start rationalize those. I think AI, when our focus more on how our business is using AI, not just users, but your point is valid. It's just everywhere now. I mean, you can't even tell whether, is that an actual
It just
video
makes
of
me
people
think-
that happened, or is it fake?
Right. It makes me think of the .com bubble.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the thing that it makes me think of.
Yeah. And what's happening now is businesses want to use a bunch of AI, and that's how all these AI companies are getting funded, is to go to the business, say you got 100,000 users, you want to give them all access to ChatGPT, okay, well, pay us all this money. And then what happens is, even if the business says, yeah, it's worth it, so we'll buy all these licenses for our users, and then they go and all of a sudden it's not just the licenses for the users now, these users are doing all these queries, and all of a sudden their bandwidth goes up and all kinds of other things like that. So we're trying to look at that, okay, like going up to the cloud and then now bringing some services back. We're trying to do some of that rationalization for customers where they can do some of the LLM work locally.
Where do you think we're at on the hype cycle?
I don't recall all the elements of the hype cycle. We're obviously on the back slope. I mean, I don't think we're in the trough of despair yet.
Before things normalize.
Yeah, that may still be coming. I don't think we're on the normalized set yet. I mean, I think we're still coming down from the hype peak. But yeah, that's what we're trying to do because there's a lot of companies, because it's the other thing that normal users might be fine with this, a consumer, where you just say, oh yeah, Google Gemini just connected to my Google account and it's got 25 years of me, and just suck all that up into the cloud.
Right.
And it's going to be able to tell you everything you want to know about everything. Hey, Gemini, tell me about this. Look through all my data and make and all my photos and everything, and write a book on my trip to Scotland. And it would do a fantastic job.
Right.
But the businesses look at that and go, wait, that whole data set that we gave cloud access to has proprietary information, customer information, patient information, all kinds of we can't do that. So,
Right.
so yeah, the good thing is that those large language models that were huge, now they're getting them compressed to smaller sizes. You got computers with lots of RAM, and you put a local one on the box, and then I still can have that same type of power as a corporate user, to where I can sit there and maybe take patient data and let that model do something with that patient data, but that model data never goes out.
Right. Right.
You know?
Yeah. You're keeping. Yeah. Because you have to follow HIPAA laws with medical information and things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, even like doing assessments of radiology. I mean, that's one thing where AI has been very, very good at, because there's nuances looking at radiology stuff that you got to be highly trained to see it, but you give that knowledge to AI and it can do it very, very well. But again, you have to be careful that patient data can't go out.
Right. Well, this is where litigation is coming down. So Gabriel and I had an interesting conversation about it in the art world, right? When it comes to intellectual property and things like that, and how was it George R. Martin, the guy who wrote the Game of Thrones books, where he and a bunch of other authors have sued ChatGPT, or was it OpenAI? I can't remember which company. Basically saying that they had trained their models on their works without permission, and that was a violation. And so I know that I don't know if they've come out with a ruling on that or not. But we're starting to see where are the legal limitations of training these things. So that'll be interesting to see how all that plays out.
Yeah.
Because I do think you're right that wherever we are in that hype cycle, I do think I agree with you. I think we are somewhere kind of on the downward slope, of the crazy crash that I'm sure will come. But it's interesting because I feel like for business applications, was it Uber? The CEO of Uber is saying that as soon as it's good enough, they're going to replace all of their Uber drivers with self-driving cars.
Yeah.
Right? It's like 9 million jobs or something like that. They're just going to get sucked up out of the market.
Yeah, and there's an interesting part to that too, because part of all of my experience in IT was around automation and systems management of making sure everybody's PCs were the same. I think a lot of people, because it's a buzzword, they take AI and make it a much broader set than what it is. Mm-hmm. They start looping in, even stuff like self-driving cars. In my perspective, is not that AI like the cutting edge. It's machine automation, is what it is. It's a very highly educated, but it's machine automation, which of course we've been doing machine automation all the way from the Industrial Revolution, right? Where we made machines to do the same thing over and over again.
The scale of replication is what's kind of crazy with
that could be kind of what happens maybe when we hit the trough of despair, or whatever it's called, on the hype cycle, where they're realizing that a lot of the things that we're calling AI today, because this is a buzzword, really isn't AI. It's using more information to drive automation than maybe what we were doing a decade ago.
Right. Well, that's what was interesting. I was talking to a guy that we play Ultimate Frisbee with, and he was saying, I sort of was mentioning it to him, and he's like, well, we've been using LLM since 2015.
Yeah.
He's over at Dell. I don't know exactly what his position is, but so that was like, I was like, oh, okay. They just recently gotten really good, and I think
and really big too. Mm-hmm. I mean, algorithms and other type of data sets have always been used for a lot of things to drive automation and other things. But yeah, this is just taking it to a much bigger level. And of course, from a consumer perspective, it's now on a level that we didn't have, right? Where you couldn't engage with, this prompt experience and say, hey, look at this document that I have and tell me how to write the final paragraph, and so there is a lot more capability there. And I'm not going to say that, I'm not going to sugarcoat AI's got some really, really cool capabilities, right? And it has brought a new level into the technology space that, they talk about waves, the computer wave, the internet wave, all those things. Is the AI wave? Yeah, I think it is. What a level of effect? I don't know. But I think that's what's going to happen is at some point, people are going to start to realize, okay, with this, whatever this thing is, it wasn't maybe truly AI. It was, some type of highly intelligent automation, and
Yeah.
and we'll see how AI starts to normalize and benefit us. I
Yes.
mean,
Yeah. I think that will be more interesting to
right,
me than the crash.
right, where we'll see, you know, maybe all of a sudden we'll start to get happy calling a company and we're talking to an AI an AI bot, and we're actually getting a good experience where we used to sit there and say, I want to talk to a human, and we didn't like using the chat bot because, again, chat bots have been around for 10, 15 years,
Yeah.
but it was not a really intelligent chat bot. It was more like if this question looks like this is the answer you give them. Maybe those will become, and on and on and on.
Whatever we got to do to get rid of that system, I'm on board.
So I think there's going to be good that comes out of it. I think the
Yeah.
question is, at what level of good? Because I mean, you look at things like the cell phone. That phase did not dip all that much. I mean, the cell phone, from its very inception all the way up to the smartphone now, has just been a net positive to everybody.
Right.
As
Right.
far as its functionality, it didn't have, it didn't go through a period where everyone thought the whole world was going to change because of it, and then it dipped down, and no, people didn't like it. Same
That
thing.
was one that stuck around.
Yeah, the internet era was another one where when the internet came, there was no really any disillusion that happened after that, outside of too many people coming on early on, and the
guess
speeds were impacted. But
Cars were probably a similar
yeah,
pattern. You didn't have that same crash.
right, cars were a net positive, and off they went. Yeah,
Yeah. To me, I think that the talking about AI is just so like it's so overdone now. But the piece of it that I think the most fascinating is its application in like geopolitical warfare, because you have something that appears to be able to make real time decisions, and when you combine that with lethal technology, applied in a rapidly changing and dynamic war scenario. Like I'm having Haley's brother Jack on, so I'm
yeah,
really curious to talk about his experience in when he was deployed to
yeah.
Syria.
And I think we do have to be careful. I mean, we've seen enough situations like what was the one just recently, where someone was interacting with the cloud AI, common cloud AI. I don't remember what it was, and they were doing some tests with it and said, "Hey, look, we need to shut this node down." And instead, it back up the copy and put it on a different server instead of doing what it was told,
Yeah, yeah.
because it had enough insight that said, "No, I need
Survival instincts.
exactly." It was you're asking me to do something that is not a self-preservation, and so I'm going to take action on my own. So I do get concerned about that. It just in the way people look at autonomous cars. I think autonomous cars can prove themselves safe. The problem is they have to prove themselves safe, and
Right.
that takes time.
Yeah.
And of course, sadly, we've seen enough where people were leveraging some auto steering capabilities, and the car crashes, and they weren't paying attention. Uh, so, but I fully believe it will get to a point to where,
We trust it.
yeah, we trust
Yeah.
it, and the safety numbers will show that it's a safer form of transportation than having human drivers.
Right.
Maybe it'll start out maybe in certain circumstances, but it will grow at some point to where it's like, okay, why do I need to expend those hours focusing on my driving to go on a family trip when I can get an auto driving car and we can just relax?
We can hang out,
And let it do its thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think
Our
it'll-
alcoholics are going to love it.
Yeah.
They're going to be like, I can drink and not drive now, but still travel.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
There's a great story, sort of, about this like adopting of technology from my mom's community where she grew up. And I think I've told this before in a couple episodes, but I'm gonna say it again. Where I think it was her great uncle, I believe. But anyway, trucks were just coming around at the time, okay, and he didn't trust them. So he would never drive a truck because and whenever he would ride in it, the door to the passenger, he would be on the outside, door would be open, and he'd have his foot on the footrest outside. In case that thing got away from them, he could jump out.
Yeah.
Because he was used to a horse,
Yeah.
out there. And so I wonder, I'm going to be that grandpa. I wonder how long it will be until there are roads where it is actually illegal to drive the vehicle yourself.
Yeah. Because that is that nexus point where it's a shift, and it will be something like that, because what will happen is as the autonomous vehicles get more and more safe and more efficient, the problem will start to rise is that the human-driven vehicles are causing the crashes.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to look to, Blade Runner or some sci-fi movie to think of here's a freeway, and it's solid 3 lanes both ways. They're all going 100 miles an hour, and the cars are 2 feet off of each other.
Right.
And look like rail cars, because the sensors and the reaction time is so good that a human can't get into that flow.
Right. There's no way.
No, and so I agree that will be, in my mind, is that 10 years away, is it 20 years away, where there will be parts of roadways that are just.
I'm gonna have to move out to Lomita at that point, driving my own truck. I'm gonna be Grandpa. Grandpa Philip is I drive my own vehicle. My grandkids are gonna be looking at me like, what are you doing? Why would you do that?
Yeah, it's like even when all the toll roads came around here, and people will be like, well, why don't you take the toll road? Well, the people that have been here in Central Texas their whole life is like, I've always taken this way. This is the route I take.
Yeah.
And you're wasting money going that way. This is the way I always go. And I get it,
Yeah.
but I think there's going to be a lot of that. But yeah, it might getting to that point that we're talking about where it's dedicated freeways with only autonomous vehicles on that.
Yeah, because I know a lot of people down in Austin will use them, especially on the for short trips, and that. But I've heard people talk about when they get up to a certain speed, when you have no driver, you're like, okay,
Yep.
it feels different, psychologically.
Yeah, and it will, just like any technology, it will take a while, because every time a human finds a failure, especially in the internet age, everybody's going to know about it. I mean, I saw a video of a guy who took Waymo to the Austin airport, and it went into a parking area, and just the way the cars were parked in this thing, it just couldn't decide what to do. And he was in there for 35 minutes and calling them, because the car was just circling, and they couldn't get it to stop.
My gosh.
And so those type of things that you have to get. I mean, you talk Six Sigma and accuracy, where it needs to get down to the 2, 3, 4 nines, where 99.9999% of the time there's not a problem. That's when people will depend on it widely.
Right.
I mean, airline travel is in that 2939 type of realm where
accidents are so rare.
Yep.
Yeah, especially for commercial airlines. too. Your big commercial airline flights.
Yeah. And even driving, even though accidents happen all the time, I mean, you anytime just going out on the road, it is a 99.9% of the time a safe activity.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's not 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9's out, but because there's so many people on the road, and we go so often without accidents, it's a pretty safe activity.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Driving, man. It's an American pastime.
Yeah.
Too. I don't know. Like we were looking at this old clunker truck that I have.
Yeah.
It's a stick shift, and it's speaking of experiences, it's an experience driving that. It feels more like a ride than it feels like than just like a way to get from A to B.
Yeah, it is. It's a driving experience. It's not just transportation.
Right. Well, that's why I wonder, especially on the AI question. When Gabriel and I were talking about it in the art form, and this is why one of the last things that I had on here was AI and the human spirit. Is that, I wonder how far AI can go into art, because part of what art is human expression. Mm-hmm. And it's us having those thoughts and ideas and epiphanies and pains and joys, that we pour into whatever this thing is, this painting, this movie, this story. That's part of that experience. So I wonder if using LLMs in an art setting is going to be truncated because of the nature of shared, like, emotional experience. Because Gabriel was talking about how, eventually somebody, it's going to be the point where you have one guy in a room and can make an entire movie with a few clicks, typing out. And he said, well, that sounds great as long as I'm the guy in the room.
Yeah.
I'm good with that.
The way I look at it is, I think it just maybe causes us to not value artistic expression the way we used to.
Say more.
It used to be that art took a long time, a lot of effort. We saw an exhibit on a British painter named John Constable, a landscape painter. But the exhibit was all of his work, and so not just finished work. And so you saw that he would go and like get someone else's work and painstakingly work to try to copy like the clouds that this master did. And it showed multiple types of brushwork to try and mirror this. And so there's so much invested in trying to be really good at it, where if AI takes out that emotional investment, in intellectual investment, and it's just someone putting a prompt in, make me a landscape painting that looks like John Constable. Mm-hmm. And it looks really, really good. Then I think as a culture, we'll not value it for what it is.
What's sort of the difference between like IKEA furniture and like a handmade rocking chair, that you made for somebody with their name engraved in the back?
Yep.
It's a different kind of value.
Yeah. And if the culture as a whole stops valuing it because AI is so readily available, then art will be hurt. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, there will be people in the culture that keep valuing art for what it is, almost even more so. I bring up the example of, like, when I was a kid, vinyl records were a big deal. And then it went into the 8-track tapes, cassette tapes, CDs, and then on to digital. Now there's more vinyl available today in 2026 than there was when I was a kid in the 70s.
Yeah.
Because people are wanting to go back to the experience that you get when you're playing a physical media on a record player, and
They want to hear that slight crackle in the background.
the warmth, the different things that come from it.
The magic dragon.
Yeah, and it even going back to the beginning of our conversation, it makes it an individual experience for them. That it's not just, a digital download. Everybody on the whole world hears exactly that. But I have not just vinyl, but this is a vinyl from the 70s.
Yeah.
It's the original press run, and even if to the casual listener can't hear the difference between the digital version and that's unique.
Yeah, well, it's a feeling.
And so I would hope that that cycle would be shorter with art, that we go into the AI thing and everyone thinks it's all cool that they can make works of art with a single prompt and whatever, but then it quickly swings back to, well, if everybody can do it, where's my individuality in this?
Right.
And then they go back to the art store and they get the paints and they get the canvas and they start making it themselves.
Yeah, well, there's also something that's valuable about the creative act. You know what I mean? I mean, a lot of people I know who retire, like, sort of, who, like, if work was their identity, going into that world of retirement, like, just sitting around and doing nothing is probably not a great plan.
No.
Being able to produce something,
Yep.
I think I think it's innate in all of us that we need that as people to thrive.
Yep.
Yeah, some of the most peaceful moments that I have in my life has been late in an evening when I have, belted out a section, a scene of, a story that I'm writing that I feel really good about. And I feel the steam coming to an end and, kind of that puff, that last little bit,
Yep.
the engine, dies down, I close my laptop and I'm like,
Yep.
It's
a deep satisfaction for sure.
Yeah. Well, Warren, this was great. Thank you so much for coming into the Type House and having the conversation. I loved this.
Philip, thanks for having me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. You've got wonderful platform, wonderful setup here, and I hope you have great success. I hope it's not 20, 30 people listening that you that you start challenging Joe Rogan for.
No. I have no intentions to try to oust that man. The thing that I find most valuable in this room is sitting across a table from somebody that I think I can share this experience with, and to really connect on a deep level and hear stories that I never have heard before, and and just get a deeper understanding of somebody else's soul and experience. That's the value of this for me.
Yeah, it is. It's for me as well.
Yeah,
and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. All right.
My
Bye,
pleasure.
everybody.